Imagine waking up in a ruined village. Your hands covered in blood. The only thing you remember is fire, screams, and a giant red gear tearing everything apart. You don't know why. You don't know how. But deep down, you know it was you. That's how Xenogears begins. A quiet martial artist named Fei Fong Wong watches his entire world burn, and something inside him wakes up. Something evil, something hungry, something binding him to the dark, cruel destiny of God. What follows isn't just a story about giant robots fighting on a broken planet. It's a 60-hour descent into trauma, identity, reincarnation, corrupt religion, forbidden science, and the very question of what God actually is. Psychology ripped straight from Freud, Jung, and Lacan. Philosophy that stares Nietzsche and Gnosticism in the face. One of the most ambitious, flawed, and brilliant narratives ever attempted in video games. Over the next few hours, we are diving into Xenogears. Every twist, every mind-bending revelation, and every heartbreaking moment across this multi-hour epic. We'll uncover who Fei really is. Why a floating computer ministry wants to turn humanity into the flesh of God. Why, after 28 years later, this game still haunts anyone who finishes it. If you've never played it, buckle up. If you have, get ready to see it like you've never seen it before. Let's uncover the mystery of this multi-hour epic in this retrospective of Xenogears. Let's begin. Our journey into Xenogears actually starts off with a young Tetsuya Takahashi working at Neo Falcom. He found himself tired of the lack of opportunities the company had to offer. He started to ponder his own purpose in life, so Takahashi left Neo Falcom for a chance to work on something much bigger. His talent as a graphic artist and map designer would land him a job at Squaresoft. Upon starting at Square, he instantly was put on the Final Fantasy team with Hironobu Sakaguchi, where his art skills would be put to good use. Takahashi also contributed to Romancing Saga and other Square properties. Making a name for himself, he'd become an integral member of Sakaguchi's team. However, as time went on, Takahashi found a growing ambition to step into the director's chair. It was during the development of Final Fantasy VI that ambition grew. They gave him the task of creating the Magitech armor for the opening scene. Sakaguchi had a specific design in mind, but Takahashi was adamant his version be used. He marched into Sakaguchi's office ready to demand it, but he didn't even need to. Upon seeing Takahashi's design for the Magitech armor, Sakaguchi agreed it enhanced the scene, and they went with it. Takahashi was known for his no-shits-given attitude. He often wouldn't back down when he really wanted something. During that time at Square, Takahashi had a fateful day where he met a young woman named Kaori Tanaka, better known as her pen name Soraya Saga. The two instantly bonded over shared love for esoteric texts, psychology, and philosophy. They'd spend time at work just talking about all this stuff. Their shared passion only grew over time and eventually bloomed into a workplace romance. They would eventually get married and start a family of their own. It was likely this romance that shaped a lot of Xenogears' deeper themes of love and duality. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll keep this in mind for later. Their desire to create a story that wove together all their shared interests only grew during their time at Squaresoft. Soraya Saga had also worked on Final Fantasy VI, helping the scenario team. She wrote the character scenarios for both Edgar and Sabin Figaro, who ended up becoming two of the most beloved characters in the game. After Final Fantasy VI, things internally at Square started to shift. Sakaguchi began to notice a growing ambition from his underlings. A lot of them were frustrated, always working on Final Fantasy. This growing passion among his team weighed heavy on him. Is Final Fantasy the only thing this company makes? I used to think about that a lot, Sakaguchi said. It was during the drafting stages of Final Fantasy VII that Takahashi and Soraya Saga penned their own draft and submitted it for review. The initial script got rejected by the higher-ups at Squaresoft for being too dark and too controversially religious for a mainstream Final Fantasy title. Around this time, Takahashi's desk started getting covered in Gundam models. Sakaguchi noticed his growing obsession and realized Takahashi had always wanted to make a game like this. Takahashi and his team were initially put in charge of following up Chrono Trigger, but those ideas eventually got scrapped in favor of letting Takahashi finally work on his own project. However, development for Xenogears was far from smooth. Most of Takahashi's team was brand new, developers who had never worked on 3D games before. A ton of training had to go into teaching them how to make games in 3D. Couple that with a tight 2-year development cycle and a ridiculously ambitious plot, and things didn't go exactly as planned. Takahashi's script kept getting more and more complex as development went on. He constantly added stuff. The higher-ups at Square actually encouraged him to just cut Xenogears short at the end of Disc 1. If you've played Xenogears, you know how catastrophic that idea would have been. That's a big reason why Disc 2 feels like such a whiplash. While Disc 2 isn't the ideal way to tell a story, and it often feels like you're being blasted with knowledge, I'm glad the full story at least got finished. It shows the ambition Takahashi and his team had for the game. Sadly, despite its cult status, a proper sequel to Xenogears would never happen. Takahashi and a bunch of team eventually left Square to start their own company called Monolith Soft, but that's a story for another day. A lot of Xenogears development staff expressed a huge relief once the project was done. It was pure hell for many of them, yet most of those same developers followed Takahashi to Monolith and went through it all over again. The translation efforts for Xenogears were no easy task either, and some of the story does feel a bit bogged down because of it. The taboo subject matter deterred a lot of people from wanting to work on the game. All the Judeo-Christian stuff acted like kryptonite for a lot of translators. While others left the project, Richard Honeywood stepped up to do the unthinkable. Translate this gargantuan beast known as Xenogears. He made quite a few changes to the initial script, and even pushed some adjustments to the Japanese script to change Yahweh from Yahweh instead. At the time he was localizing Xenogears, Richard Honeywood was a Jehovah's Witness, and a lot of people in his church didn't think it was a good idea for him to be working on a game because of how it betrayed God. I'll give my thoughts on that later, but for now I'll just say I'm glad he stuck with it. Back then, translation wasn't something Square took super seriously. Their main audience was Japan, and the Western world was just kind of an afterthought. It was actually Richard Honeywood and the absolute hell he went through translating Xenogears that helped shape the localization industry into what we have today. Honeywood walked so others could run. It wasn't until Final Fantasy VIII and later Square titles that things really started to change. Seeing what he had to go through, it's kind of a miracle we even got this game at all. Well, I think it's about time we unpack this beast of a narrative to understand what makes it tick. Xenogears starts out as a massive ship called the Eldridge flies through space. The crew of the Eldridge is in a total sense of panic as some sort of virus has begun to infect the inner workings of this ship. People are scrambling to escape pods trying to get out, but they get shot down after whatever is controlling the ship activates the Eldridge weapon system. A young boy sees a woman in a tank, we get a quick flash of a monolith with an eye, and the captain looks at his locket with a picture of his wife and daughter inside, stares at it while he makes the decision to activate the self-destruct button and go down with his ship. We see the wreckage of the Eldridge as a naked woman with purple hair emerges from it, staring off into the horizon. This cutscene is incredible. What does the Eldridge have to do with the rest of the narrative? Who is this mysterious purple-haired woman? What the hell is going on, and what does any of this mean? We have more questions than answers at this point, but fear not. All shall unveil itself over the course of this narrative. A large amount of time has passed as a text crawler appears over the screen while bonds of sea and fire play over it. It's one of gaming's most amazing compositions. The continent of Ignis finds itself amongst the flames of war as nations of Ave and Kislev have been battling for 500 years. The conflict has gone on for so long they don't even know why they continue to fight. Kislev had the upper hand over the conflict, but after the religious sect known as Ethos evacuated giant mechs called Gears, the tides turned into Ave's favor. The appearance of the mysterious military force known as Gebler turned the tide even more in Ave's favor, allowing them to overtake much of Kislev's territories. We are thrown into another scene with mechs fighting as fire burns over the village before we see our protagonist Faye painting flames of war. Faye was brought to the village by a mysterious man 3 years ago. Wounded and unconscious, the man pleaded for the elder to take him in and watch over him. Faye befriended a woman named Alice and a man named Timothy who are to wed. It's the day before the wedding and the village is scrambling for the big event. Faye heads upstairs. Before Faye and Timothy can talk much, Alice's younger brother Dan busts in and starts stinking up the joint. Dan insults Timothy, demands to talk to Faye, and leaves. Dan, my boy, what in the hell is going on with your forehead? Dan tries to convince Faye to run away with Alice and get married since he wants Faye to be his brother-in-law instead of Timothy. He even tries to convince him by saying she's a good cook, and I quote, "Well endowed." Who invited this perverted little kid? No matter what we choose, nothing happens, but if we agree with Dan, he thanks us for entertaining it. Even talking to Alice and Dan's aunt, she isn't looking forward to raising this kid, and I gotta say, I can't blame her. He's kind of obnoxious. Faye talks to Alice, who has romantic feelings for Faye, as she asks what would have happened if he'd grown up in the village rather than showing up 3 years ago. She asks Faye to make his way to the mountain pass and go talk to Dr. Uzuki to get a camera for the wedding. Making our way to the mountain path, this is the first time in Xenogears we get a real taste of gameplay and combat. I'll talk more about the combat later, but for now, let's just talk a little bit about exploration. Xenogears is one of those rare RPGs from back in the day that lets you jump. This was clearly done by the team to make it feel more cinematic, but oftentimes becomes a royal pain in the ass. Pro tip, always adjust your camera to make these jumps. It's going to make the notorious Tower of Babel a much easier time. The jumping isn't too terrible though, and for the most part it does add some nice addition to the gameplay despite the Tower of Babel being one of the more annoying platforming parts. Faye makes his way up the mountain path and to Citan's house. Alright, it's time to address the self-proclaimed Solarian University linguists who are no doubt going to make their way into my comment section and tell me how wrong I am about the pronunciation of Citan. Well, joke's on you, because there's about 100 different ways to pronounce this name and all of them are right. Citan's name derives from the Arabic word shaitan, which is demon, or in the context of this game, Satan. It was during the translation of Xenogears Richard Honeywood pointed out they simply couldn't spell a character's name Shitan. Considering the spelling of the word would be pronounced as shitan, and it sounds like the word shit. So Honeywood thought it best to translate with a C instead of SH. I've heard Saitan, I've heard Citan, I've heard Citan. I'm going to say Saitan for this script. Faye busts into Saitan's house and talks to Yui, Citan's wife, who informs us Citan is in the back, tinkering with his junk. Really, Honeywood? We just talked about how you changed Citan's name because it sounded like the word shit. Surely you could have picked a better line than this. Faye goes to find Citan and walks in him cranking his hog to the busty Solarian babe makes babies on the beach.
I hear you, and I'm coming.
Just kidding. Citan is working on a land crab on the roof. Faye tells him Alice sent him to pick up the camera for the wedding tomorrow. He remembers the wedding is tomorrow and offers to bring the camera himself since he doesn't trust Faye with such a delicate device going down the mountain. He extends an invitation for Faye to stay for dinner. Faye has no objection since he loves Yui's cooking. Citan takes Faye to the garage and shows him a music box. It plays a theme Faye is very familiar with. These angels in the music box and Faye's connection to the song hints at something much bigger to come. This Citan guy also knows more about things than he's letting on. After dinner, Citan and Faye return to the village, but as they cross the bridge, they see Lahan is on fire. Gears landed near Lahan and turned this peaceful village into a battlefield. Citan and Faye make their way down the mountain path to Lahan to check on everyone in the village. Most have already escaped, but Timothy is headed back to the village to look for Dan. Citan and Faye convince him to take Alice and make their way to the other villagers while they look for Dan. It doesn't take long for them to find Dan standing atop his house with Alice's wedding dress. He'd gone back to the village because he didn't want it to burn in the fire. He jumps out of the window and Faye boards one of the gears. Dan wonders why the gears have shown up in the first place. Citan comments they are after the gear Faye is operating, and Dan is shocked he is operating that monster. Citan, doing what he does best, offers up the cryptic but epic line, Faye is bound by the dark, cruel destiny of God. Unfortunately, Timothy comes running into the village and is gunned down by one of the enemy gears. In a fit of rage, Faye fights for his life to protect the rest of the village. With a mysterious swing of a pendant and a picture of a bloody kid with hair in his face, Faye blacks out. The gear malfunctions and the village is leveled, killing Alice in the aftermath. When Faye awakens, he is unable to recollect what happened the night before. The villagers horrified by the events that took place. They've blamed Faye for stepping into the gear in the first place, and Dan is taking this extremely hard, calling Faye a monster. I can't really blame him. His sister was killed by Faye, and he blames Faye for doing it. Citan finds it best for Faye to leave the village, who was feeling responsible for the events that transpired. If he hadn't gotten into the gear in the first place, Lahan village would likely still be standing. Not only must Faye now move on from his life of the past 3 years, he likely wonders where he's going to go after having no recollection of his prior past, given only the advice by Citan to go to the capital of Ave. Leaving his life behind, Faye makes his way to Black Moon Forest. I loved this opening to Xenogears. I remember playing this for the first time as a 14-year-old kid wondering what in the hell was going on. I had just watched a ship destroyed, our main character burned his village to the ground. I wanted to know what was going on. Xenogears had felt different from any game I had experienced at this point. Usually in JRPGs, characters have an event that causes them to leave the village. It's not unusual for a peaceful village to be attacked in the crossfires of war, but it's often a trope leading to the protagonist leaving the village and rising up to the occasion to become the hero. I can't think of very many games that flip this trope on its head and make the amnesiac protagonist the catalyst for which destroys the village and sends him on his quest. It really does make it seem like Faye is bound by the dark, cruel destiny of God. In a way, Xenogears has set up the players to reflect on our actions. We don't have a choice but to hop into the gear and fight the soldiers. We played a part in the destruction of Lahan. Much like Faye, we have some responsibility for the destruction of Lahan, since we are playing the role of Faye. As Xenogears is soon about to teach us, we must take responsibility for our actions and often reflect on how they hurt others. Faye makes his way through the Black Moon Forest, the first real dungeon of the game. We get a bit more time to play around with the combat, try out the platforming even more, and get an idea of how Xenogears is going to play. It isn't long before Faye runs into a woman with red hair who points a gun at him, threatening to shoot him, and Faye just casually says, "Do it." He's looking for an excuse to end his life. This is one of the first of many signs showing how hurt Faye is. However, the red-headed woman is knocked unconscious with Faye shouting her name Ellie. But how did he know that? Once she wakes up, she and Faye exchange names officially. This is setting up one of Xenogears' biggest mysteries, and yet again we are going to have to wait for many hours to find out why. With no other options really, they decide to work together to get out of the forest. Faye and Ellie start to argue. He hits a nerve with Ellie when he says none of this would have happened if those gears had not appeared in Lahan in the first place. She calls him a coward for running away from his problems. This line from Ellie almost feels like it comes out of nowhere, but upon reflection, it feels as if Ellie is projecting some of herself onto Faye. Just like Faye, she too was running away from her responsibilities. Ellie runs off into the forest alone. And wouldn't you know it, Ellie is attacked by a giant dinosaur. Faye runs to rescue her. This frickin' badass attempts to take a giant Jurassic beast on with his bare hands. Come on, Faye, you're barely level 1. You really think you're gonna take on a T-Rex? Citan shows up in his land crab with Weltall, the gear used to level Lahan. In Japanese fashion and armed with a mech, Faye beats Godzilla into submission. While Faye is asleep, Citan and Ellie begin to talk. It seems Citan knows the tongue in which Ellie speaks. Citan makes an observation that she is an agent of Gebler. He deduces this from the dog tags left behind on the soldiers at Lahan that they were the party responsible for the attack. Citan tells Ellie it's probably best for her to leave and go back to where she came from. This is the first real time we begin to question just who Citan is. If we were to break him down into an archetype, he would be the wise old mentor pushing the reluctant hero on his journey. Since Mr. Badass has already taken on a T-Rex and Citan has joined our party, let's talk combat. Combat in Xenogears feels a bit different than most JRPGs. While Xenogears uses a turn-based formula from games of the time, it attempts to change things up. By introducing death blows into the formula, it adds a unique spin on combat. Think of these like fighting game mechanics. Certain button combos will prompt death blows to be learned. Triangle is your weak attack, square your medium attack, and X your strong attack. Combining them together, you will unlock a variety of death blows to use. The catch is you're limited per turn how many points you can use. You'll gain more points as time goes on. The stronger the attack, the more points it uses. Triangle uses 1, square uses 2, and X uses 3. Later on in the game, you can opt to use lesser attacks and save up AP. This allows you to queue up a bunch of death blows and land in succession on enemies. Characters also have ether skills. These skills act as magic, but I never really use them. A majority of the time, death blows are going to be used most of the time, and on occasion, you might use an ether skill to heal, but most of the time, you're just going to use items. Citan and Faye make a quick pit stop at the city of Dazzle to find some parts to fix Weltall. This is the first real time we get to explore a village. Xenogears is filled with finer details fleshing out the world and how certain things work. For instance, talking to the townsfolk, we can learn a little bit about how the water system works in Dazzle, or the role ethos plays in this world. Xenogears goes out of its way to sell you on the name of the gear parts, adding depth to Xenogears. It wasn't needed, but much appreciated. It really goes to show the time the developers took to flesh out this world and make it feel unique. Unfortunately for Citan and Faye, the mech merchant doesn't have the parts needed to fix Weltall. Citan decides to go back and get Veltal. Faye treks his way through the desert as an aerial object flies above his head, followed shortly by 2 mechs. Following the 2 mechs, it leads us straight into an ambush. A mysterious man named Graf appears, seemingly knowing more about Faye's past than he does, claiming he knows Faye's father. It's here Faye delivers the iconic line, "My dad? You mean my father?" Graf drops the line we've all been waiting for. Faye is the Godslayer, the host of the machine that will kill Mother God, the age-old JRPG trope. After a fight with a giant sandworm, Faye and Citan along with Veltal are captured by Ave. And yet again, Xenogears gives us another mystery to solve. Just who is Graf, this mysterious masked man, and what connection does he have to Faye's past?
Let us join together. I never thought we'd meet again like this. It must be fate. How ironic. But I'll never let you have him. Even if it kills me.
Citan seemingly appears in a weird cryptic background talking to yet another masked man named Emperor Cain. This is the 3rd masked man we've now encountered, and it's not going to be the last. Emperor Cain warns Citan the time of the gospel is at hand. We have no clue what any of this means yet, but it's another knock against Citan and wavers our trust in him yet again. Another thing Xenogears does extremely well is keep us constantly guessing who Citan is and what his true motives are. For much of the playthrough, it's not uncommon for many to question the allegiance of Citan and his true purpose. It's one of the many mysteries Xenogears has set up. We are bombarded with information at this point. Xenogears keeps setting up mystery after mystery. Who is the Red Warrior? What is Citan's true purpose? And why is Faye known as the Godslayer? Who the hell is Graf? What the hell was the ship at the beginning? Who is this mysterious woman with purple hair? The mysteries keep piling up, and the first time I played this, I began to wonder if they would have enough time to pay all of these setups off. Faye and Citan fill the shake of the transporter vehicle they are in. It seems the transport vessel has been attacked by a bunch of sand pirates looking to procure Veltal for themselves. A bombastic, awesome track plays as we fight through enemy soldiers, eventually making our way to Veltal and square off against the leader of the sand pirates in his own gear. Eventually, the two are sucked up in quicksand and find themselves stuck in a cavern below the sand. The young sand pirate introduces himself as Bart, and for the time being, Faye and Bart call a truce while they find their way out of this forgotten underground cavern. And yet again, Citan is cozying up to people like he knows them. Seriously, who is this guy? Faye can't take Citan anywhere without him chatting up a storm with some stranger like he's some long-lost war buddy he hasn't seen since the days back at the academy. Faye and Bart make their way through the cavern. A word of note here is how well designed the enemies are here. We've got bugs controlling mechs and other strange creatures floating about. I like the amount of effort that went into designing so many of the enemies in Xenogears. They just stand out and don't feel generic like so many other games try to do. The enemy design intentionally goes out of its way to make them feel like they are part of the environment. It's just one of the many things Xenogears does to make its world feel lived in, rather than just another generic JRPG enemy that you fight countless of times. Now might actually be a good time to talk about how mech combat works. For the most part, mech battles work similarly to how foot battles do, but act a bit differently. Mechs use fuel for every action taken. Where the key differences lie, however, is how those death blows are executed. There are 3 levels total that it can build up to. In order to build up to these levels, you'll need to attack then stop. By stopping, the next turn you'll be at level 2, and if you stop again, level 3. The stronger the level, the stronger the death blow the gear can do. Ether spells can also be used in gears, but like foot battles, it's not something you're necessarily always going to do. Though I will say Bart's Wild Smile ability, which lowers the accuracy of an enemy, always comes in handy. Gears also don't level up traditionally. Your gear's strength is always tied to the equipment you have equipped, meaning money in Xenogears is quite valuable. It's probably best to skimp on the armor for your characters while on foot and save them for some of the gear parts needed. This is something that if you do before the upcoming boss fight, it can soften the difficulty spike here just a little bit. Faye and Bart find themselves stopping at a small little hut inside the cavern, wondering who the hell lives in such a place like this. Getting out to investigate, they run into an old man inside, introducing himself as Old Man Ball. His full name is Balthazar. He knows quite a good deal about ancient history of the world, showing off a collection of skulls he's made an astute observation humans didn't appear on this planet until roughly 10,000 years ago. The appearance of the human skulls happens sporadically rather than trekking with the rest of evolution over time. Old Man Ball also recalls a legend about humans and God once living together in a paradise, but the humans were cast out from this paradise for partaking in the forbidden fruit. The humans built mechanical giants to fight against God and overpowered him. God, wounded, escaped and burrowed under the ocean as he began a rejuvenation process to come back. Old Man Ball here is referencing one of our oldest stories. He references the Garden of Eden and the partaking of the fruit of knowledge, as well as references the rebellion of 1/3 of the angels from heaven rebelling against God. Xenogears also subtly hints at the young Earth creationist myth, at least with humans as a species. Ball also knows quite a bit about the ancient world, and Bart asks him if he knows anything about these extremely powerful gears called God Gears. He makes mention of it being an extremely powerful gear used in the past to fight against God, calling it an Omni Gear, but dismisses it as a myth and tells Bart he should too. He agrees to fix the gear and is stunned when he sees Veltal, shouting it's the vessel of the Slayer of God. Homeboy here knows more than he is letting on. Dude's more suspicious than Ceton on a hot Ave day. Bart and Faye deactivate the switch holding the door shut, but before they can escape, they are ambushed by a gear. This is the first real challenging boss fight, and if you're not prepared or haven't learned gear combat to its full extent yet, this boss can and will wipe the floor with you. Coming out victorious, the gear gets up almost unfazed, and Faye goes WWE on his ass, leaving Bart flabbergasted at the sheer power Faye just let loose.
So shut up, bitch!
Bart and Faye exit the cavern. Just beyond the horizon, Bart points out Bledavik, the capital of Ave. The caverns are one of my core memories from Xenogears. I've always loved this segment. Seeing Bart and Faye work together and bond over a common goal is very believable. A strong start to a friendship they'll form over the course of the game. Bart and Faye reboard the Yggdrasil. After some quick introductions, we are free to explore. Bart stays behind the hangar to service his gear. Faye and Ceton join Old Myson for some tea. After prying and sparking some curiosity, Ceton convinces Myson to spill the beans about Bart. Before they became sand pirates, Bart used to be the Prince of Ave and Myson his retainer. Bart's father, King Edbart, supposedly died from an illness 12 years ago. After the death of Edbart, his vizier Shakan took the throne. Shakan has kidnapped the Holy Mother of Nisan, Marguerite, to learn about the whereabouts of the Fatima Jasper. The Jasper is an ancient treasure passed down to the Holy Mother and the Fatima bloodline. Bart has one half while Margie has the other. Bart overhears the conversation and gives his thoughts. He is under the assumption that Jasper is the key to the legendary weapon, a gear. Bart takes us to a room inside the Yggdrasil, showing us the first king of Fatima's bloodline making a pact with the giants. The scroll does indeed show a mechanical-like god, leading Bart to believe this is one of the legendary Omnigears. Well, this explains why Bart wanted any information Old Man Ball had. Bart asks Ceton and Faye if they will help them rescue Margie from the clutches of Shakan. Seeing Faye's power in the cavern, he realizes this may be their best chance. Faye is hesitant though. Everyone wants Faye to use the gear to fight, but people die every time he does. Faye walks out and makes his way to the hangar, staring at Veltal. I get it. Faye saw the destruction of the place he called home for 3 years. Faye doesn't want to fight. Seeing war and the fruitless violence is pointless. Bart assures Faye he doesn't want to fight either. Bart only fights to eventually bring peace, locked on to that end goal. What Bart is saying is in order to ensure peace sometimes one has to fight. Bart assures Faye it wasn't his fault those in Lahan died. They would have died anyways, something very clear since Kislev had already begun to burn the village of Lahan down. This heart-to-heart moment was a reflection of Bart's own feelings. In many ways, Bart accepts his past. He realizes those events, his fault or not, involved him. If he wants to fulfill his goal, he has to fight. Sigurd and Ceton also tried to convince Faye to fight. Sigurd realizes that Bart needs a friend his age. He sees Faye as someone who can fulfill this role, asking him to, at the very least, look after Bart. Bart is off in the distance talking to his father. Bart feels he has constantly been running away, letting his father down. Bart sees similarities between him and Faye, a broken man haunted by his past. Bart feels powerless to take back Ave, let alone rescue Margie. Giving the characters time to show complexity is both a blessing and a curse of Xenogears. On one hand, moments like this flesh out Bart's character. On the other hand, it's so much fluff it hinders Xenogears from being able to meet its deadlines. I'm not pointing this out as a flaw either, just pointing out the obvious. It's moments like this that makes Xenogears so special, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That night, Gebler invades the pirate hideout. Without a choice, Faye is once again forced into Veltal to protect his friends. Citan hops into a gear called Heimdall, helping Bart and Faye fight off the invading Gebler forces. Citan knows how to pilot a gear, you say? Huh. Why am I not surprised? What does Sigurd mean it might not even be able to keep up with him? Citan is a bona fide badass confirmed. After the battle, Faye decides to help, partly because he feels he owes Bart. The unspoken reason, though, is Faye finally realizes he has found a place where he can belong. People worth protecting. Faye begins to realize no matter how hard he tries to escape using Veltal, he can't, love it or hate it. Understanding it or not, he is involved with this conflict because of his ability. It's fun to see Faye grow as a character. He's complex and not driven by motives that usually propel JRPG protagonists forward. The characters alone are a testament to why Xenogears is so well loved. They fall into the classic archetypes but don't lean into those. Xenogears characters feel real. Despite that clunky translation at times, the game does a really good job at bringing this cast to life. Xenogears really tackles its themes maturely, not needing to spell it out. It does a really good job at showing me the power of friendship rather than just shouting it at the top of its lungs. I'm looking at you, Kingdom Hearts.
I don't need a weapon. My friends are my power.
Arriving at Bledavik, we see a ship fly in. It's the flagship from the Gebler forces. Aboard the ship is Ramses and his second-in-command, Miang. He berates one of the commanding officers for using brawn instead of brains. Who are these and who is Gebler? Check one for another mysterious villain. Shakan tells Ramses they have yet to find the first half of the Fatima Jasper. Margie will not reveal its location. With no plan set in motion, Faye will join the martial arts competition. Bart must find a way to sneak into the castle while Faye fights. The music here is very lively, capturing a feeling of the hustle and bustle of a busy city. We can also take the time to appreciate the still image and immense size of Bledavik. Xenogears does this really unique thing where it gives the cities their own overworld map. This shows the scope of what the city looks like and just goes to show how massive some of these cities are. Bart needs a key to sneak into the castle. Gathering intel, we're able to hunt down the key to the waterway which leads directly into the castle. Faye heads to the tournament and Bart prepares to enter the castle. Upon entering the tournament, the strange masked man from the beginning of the game is there. The blue-cloaked man knows Faye, but it's unclear how. Also here is Dan, hell-bent on getting revenge for his sister. Dan lashes out at Faye, calling him a bastard. It just kind of occurred to me how Faye and Dan are kind of opposite. There's this stark contrast in how the two of them handle the destruction of Lacan. I might circle back to this later on when full context of Faye's mental state becomes more clear. Bart arrives in the castle, giving us time to explore every nook and cranny. In one such case, a man in the library, if we talk to him, he tells us Bledavik was built on a rock to avoid being sucked up by the quicksand. Bledavik was strategically placed for its underground water aquifers. There is so much lore you can just learn by talking with NPCs. It's insane. It's probably one of the reasons so many of us go back to Xenogears and replay it, because there's so much you can just learn from random NPCs alone that flesh out so much detail about its world. After getting our fill for exploration, Bart sneaks into the room where Margie is being held. She is excited to see him. Margie grabs her stuffed animal and together they leave Bledavik Castle. Bart and Margie are stopped by Ramses and Miang, holding them off until Faye appears to help them out. Ramses also recognizes Faye's fighting style, feeling as if he's faced off against Faye before, but how Ramses knows Faye or what connection Ramses has to Faye's past is unknown. It's yet again another one of these mysteries that Xenogears continues to set up. They make their way to the elevator and ride it down to the hangar. Ellie hides them from the guards pursuing them, but Bart is hesitant to trust her, and rightly so. Faye and Margie, however, both feel she can be trusted. Ellie helps us into the hangar and into a gear so we can escape. Back on the Yggdrasil, it's quickly decided we are going to take Margie back to Nissan. Margie was only kidnapped because she was tricked into believing her mother was still alive, leaving on her own accord. Nissan is neutral in the war and seen as a holy place, so it's unlikely Ave will just attack to get her back. In attempting to talk to Margie, a giant stuffed animal creature blocks the door to the bridge. We ask Margie to move it, and she does. I present to you Xenogears' most annoying party member in the game, Choo Choo. Every Japanese game needs a mascot, and Choo Choo steps up to the plate. This fluffball exists, and I love and hate the game for it. Margie tells Faye of a time when she and Bart were kids. Bart had always looked out for Margie even when they were little. Margie recalls a time where Bart took cracks from a whip meant for her and mentioned you can see the scars on his back. It paints Shikhan as a Gebler agent only wanting power and nothing more. Margie was younger than Bart at the time too. She was under 10 at this time. It goes to show how removed from human decency Xenogears villains are. I also found the scene moving because it shows how true masculinity should look like. I'm just going to say it. I'm tired of living in a world where masculinity, like this, is demonized, where men aren't held up to the standard to do this. It's these heroic stories, these moments, that resonate with us in fiction and real life. It's not to say women can't be heroic, but it goes to show what a man will endure to protect the women in his life. This should be upheld, not vilified. Upon returning to Nissan, all the townsfolk and sisters are elated to see Margie back safe. She decides to show Citan and Faye around the temple on the balcony. The sun shines through the stained glass window and it looks really pretty. Even for a PlayStation 1 game, the graphics here just simply do a good job at showcasing the technical prowess this game had back in the day. She makes this comment about how God originally wanted to create humans perfectly, but wanted us to help each other out, so he gave us one wing each. That's why we have to help each other fly. I'm going to dive into this more when we have more context, but it's a clear nod to God creating Eve from the rib of Adam. Remember, I said this game was written by a husband and wife? Yeah, that's a detail that doesn't go unmissed. Margie says there's a picture of the founding mother of Nissan and takes us to see it. Upon seeing the painting, Faye instantly realizes how much Sophia looks like Ellie. Citan doesn't realize it right away, but he does notice the painting itself resembles Faye's unique style. Then Faye has this vision of someone who looks a lot like him painting the picture. Who is this man, and why does he look like Faye? One of the many questions Xenogears is going to have to answer. Back in town, Bart wants Sigurd to tell him his connection between Ramses and Citan. Something at this point I have forgotten to mention is that yes, Ramses and Citan and Sigurd all seem to know each other. Sigurd looks over at Citan as if asking for permission to tell the story. Citan nods. Turns out Sigurd and Citan used to work under Ramses, seeing his vision of the way the Solarian Empire should run. They genuinely believed in his vision serving under him. They were a group of elite soldiers called the Elements. Sigurd was taken from the surface and used in the military, experimented on with drugs to see if it could enhance his abilities. He was recruited after showing aptitude. Citan, on the other hand, was a pure-blood Solarian born in the lower levels. The two of them attended the same academy in Solaris. Bart is rightfully upset at Sigurd for keeping this from him. If he worked for Gebler and had inside info, he probably could have understood how they worked. But that was exactly why he didn't tell. Didn't want to drive them into a battle they would have no chance at winning. Citan told Bart Ramses wanted to build a system based purely on meritocracy, away from class and social structures Solaris had. While this sounds good on paper, it only puts the most intelligent, strongest, and most skilled first. Those were the only ones who were going to be rewarded in this system. Citan realized this was just as bad as the other system and didn't make life better for anybody. Meritocracy can only work when a society as a whole can benefit from it and make society better. Capitalism has been the best way this has been implemented because those with certain skills can succeed and people can learn, making good, affordable life for everyone. But he does want to still oppress those who lack skill or intellect. Without getting too political, realize the system of capitalism has been co-opted by these very same people Citan is referring to. I could go on a rant about this, and I'll just end on this. While corporations control everything and the same four investment firms have their grubby hands in everything, They hold all the power. Perhaps I'll hold my thoughts on this for a Bioshock video at some point for a deeper dive. Sigurd makes a comment that he borrowed the table from the shopkeeper, saying if the young master needed to borrow anything, just to ask. Bart makes a comment saying it's nice to know this because he got in trouble from stealing from him as a child. It was a toy boat and fireworks he stole, pretending he was the Navy. We didn't need to know this about Bart as a kid, and he had dreams of being on a ship. But it's good character building and nice to know he at least got to live out his dream. Citan and Sigurd have come up with a plan to take back Bledavik and take down Shikon. With 3 major forces to contend with, they need to plan accordingly. Bart is going to take care of Shikon while Faye holds off the units stationed at the border of Kislev, and the other team holds up the rest. Citan volunteers Faye to join the unit of Gears at the border of Kislev, and surprisingly he agrees. It really feels as if Faye has found a strong friendship within Bart and a reason to fight. With saying their goodbyes, they prepare to go to their posts. Sister Agnes gives Margie a hard time about Bart and marrying him, and this gets awkward fast, but seeing as they were royalty, I guess it wasn't that uncommon 4 centuries ago, but still. Marrying your first cousin? Definitely something to frown upon. Gameplay shifts to Faye and he climbs up the cliff. Arriving near the top, Faye is attacked by the very same group that attacked the pirate base, accompanied by Ellie. After a fight with all of the Gears, one of them says he needs more drive since they are being bested by a lamb. Ellie has a flashback. Whatever happened, it didn't end well last time she used a drive. A scene of blood and death everywhere. Vance plans to use more, risking up messing himself up. To stop this, she activates it herself. This was the first fight I lost to due to not being able to heal yet. With the drive altering her personality, Faye is able to subdue her, and they share a heartfelt moment. I have no clue where the others went. It's clear though, Faye and Ellie are destined to be together, a revelation that will become more clear as time passes on. Meanwhile, Shikon was planning on Bart and his friends trying to capture him to take him back to Ave, so naturally they had their defenses ready. Myson, suspecting that something might happen thanks to Bart's teacup breaking, uses Citan's land crab to save them. Meanwhile, Faye finds himself battling Vanderkom, who is in charge of guarding the Kislev border. I won these fights by the skin of my teeth. We really, at this point, need a way to heal the Gears, or at least a way to make them stronger, and maybe there was, and my stupid ass just somehow forgot to upgrade the gear parts at this point to make the Gears stronger. So it's probably best to check the shop before you actually go on to this portion of the game. The upcoming Vanderkom fight proves to be annoying though, especially if you haven't taken that time to prepare. After the ship is destroyed and Vanderkom's gear defeated, Graf shows up offering him power, making his gear stronger. Bart finds Gebler is hot on their tail and a missile from their ship causes the Yggdrasil to surface. It's the Red Gear, piloted by the Red Warrior. Ramses refers to him as the Demon of ELRU. The Demon of ELRU wipes the floor with Ramses, causing him to flee. The Yggdrasil is destroyed by the Red Gear lifting it up and bending it in two. Who in the hell is this guy? The Demon of ELRU. How does Ramses know who he is, and what connection does he have to Ramses? Citan is emergency potted off the ship. Citan observes the site where Faye fought Vanderkom. He deduces the Demon of ELRU showed up and ended Vanderkom. Holy shit, what an intense series of events. Xenogears throws a lot at the beginning, but it knows how to keep you on your toes. It was at this section, though, I realized what many might consider a flaw with Xenogears. Its pacing. Xenogears was always planned to be story first, but it was one of the many reasons I think the game didn't hit mainstream. Accompany this with the offset pacing of Disc 2, which we'll talk about later, it cemented the status of it being a game that were meant for gamers who enjoyed story first. I live for this. I need more stories like Xenogears injected into my veins. And depending on your tolerance for story-driven games, you may find this game difficult to play if you're someone who's playing more for gameplay rather than story. Meanwhile, Faye seems to have been captured by Kislev. A giant ship appears with a masked woman offering some sort of military weapon or something to them. In return, she asks it be delivered to D-Block and Kislev along with the pilot Faye. We get a short scene of Faye playing ball with a woman who I'm most certain is his mother. Eventually, the camera pans out and it appears to be a kid watching, almost as if it's a childhood memory of Faye. To add yet another layer to this, an adult Faye is also observing the same thing. What in the hell is going on here? It's clear we are inside Faye's fractured psyche. Something tells me this place, this memory, is going to be very important later on. Faye finds himself in D-Block prison located in the capital of Kislev, Nortun. It's a place reserved for criminals. He's shocked to learn he was brought here heavily guarded by the Kislev military, since he has no recollection of how he got here. Faye must participate in what is referred to as a baptismal ceremony, a sort of initiation process, if you will. Everything in D-Block is determined by rank. Depending on your rank, this will determine how much freedom you have. Faye must engage in a one-on-one fight with these men to determine his rank while at D-Block. The final fight always ends with a demi-human named Rico, and you will always lose. Faye meets a demi-human rat man named Hammer. Hammer acts as the inside man and merchant during this long section. Get used to this song, we are going to be hearing it for a while. Hammer suggests participating in gear battling, a recreational sport prisoners participate in for freedom and a life of luxury. It doesn't take long for Faye to turn his nose up at the offer. Hammer is shocked Faye has turned it down. Not many new prisoners get this offer, and he thinks he's kind of dumb for not taking this opportunity that falls into his hands that so many prisoners do not get. The D-Block doctor was also recently replaced, and sure as shit, it's Citan. He found out through intel that Veltal was taken here and figured Faye would be here too. Citan also breaks the news that Bart and the rest of the Yggdrasil crew didn't make it. It seems the demon of ELRU got them first. Citan tells Faye he must fight in the tournament, reminding Faye of his promise to Bart to protect Margie and Nissan. Citan is always cozying up to Faye, gearing him up to fight, quite literally. He also reveals that the Red Gear annihilated the entire squad protecting the border of Kislev. Faye thinks it might have been him since he blacked out and can't remember a damn thing. Citan dismisses it, stating there are other logical explanations. With no other option, Faye must battle and win against the 3-year champ, Rico. The scene shifts to a floating computer with multiple entities in it talking about him, awakening, and being in Kislev. So the demon of ELRU is in the same place as Faye. That's convenient. They also mention the anime relic excavation is going well and something about the geisha key, none of which we have any idea of what they're talking about and likely won't for quite a while. But more than that, who are these mysterious, computerized, digitalized, floating heads? Yet another mystery Xenogears continues to set up. The gear combat scenes act as a little mini-game fighting section. There isn't much to it, but it does serve the purpose of diversifying the gameplay just a little bit, giving us something more to do than just story and battle. This was a staple back then in the PlayStation era. You had these little gameplay sections that broke up the monotony of the gameplay, and this serves the same basic purpose. Faye's first battle doesn't go very well, despite the fact he still won. It seems the first candidate cheated, causing an explosion in Faye's gear. Faye fights his way to the semi-finals. Rico comes along to the prison barracks asking Faye some questions. One of Rico's subordinates placed the explosion in Faye's gear to kill him. He was pissed that Faye kicked his ass when he arrived at D-Block. Since then, 3 other battlers have died and Faye has been the only recent change in D-Block. He's suspect number 1. Rico isn't so sure Faye is behind the attacks, but he has his doubts. The bodies were found in the sewer. While dangerous, it's uncommon for a battler to turn up dead. Rico wants to investigate, so Citan and Faye decide to accompany Rico to prove his innocence. After making our way through a rather annoying sewer dungeon, we come across a creature called Red Rum.
Here's Johnny!
This is the creature behind all of the murders. Red Rum seems to be intelligent, almost as if he was once human. Citan decides to give him a proper burial. Back to prison life we go. Citan has another meeting with Emperor Cain. They seem to be discussing the awakening of the demon of ELRU. The Ministry of Floating Heads seems to fear him. Both Emperor Cain and Citan see him as a threat, but don't want to take him out. The demon of ELRU has awakened 3 times. When were the others? Just who is the demon of ELRU? Just who is Citan? Who in the hell are the Floating Heads? And this Cain guy? Again, more questions than answers. Gebler is planning to make a direct attack on Kislev. Ellie's heading the mission to protect the Hecht unit. Meanwhile, Faye prepares for the semifinals and manages to win his way through. Our next fight will be with Rico himself. Faye prepares Veltal for the upcoming finals. Wiseman appears challenging him to a fight. He criticizes Faye's form. Wiseman advises Faye to take out his fissure. It's the only way to take out a gear-like steer. Faye notices that Wiseman's fighting style is very similar to his. Wiseman reveals Faye's father Khan and him used to train under the same master. Khan would eventually leave after fighting for the Shavat army and marry a woman named Karen who died when Faye was very young. He also reveals Groff and Faye fought, which left Faye mortally wounded. At the request of Khan, Wiseman took Faye to Lahan to recover. Khan's whereabouts are unknown. Wiseman leaves Faye to prepare for the finals. Faye wins the finals and becomes the new champion, catching the eye of the Kaiser. Gebler invades Kislev with the intention of destroying Nortune. Kislev acquired the battleship Goliath. It's capable of disrupting the shields hiding Solaris from the rest of the world. They were never meant to obtain it. As punishment, the Gazelle Ministry, those floating heads we saw earlier, order their purge. Domina, one of the 4 elements, is sent to initiate the purge. She isn't a fan of the lambs despite being one herself. The Kaiser of Kislev, Sigmund, wants to talk to Faye. He wants us to join him in his fight and tells Faye to think about his proposal. Meanwhile, Rico goes into the Kaiser's bedroom. A smell permeates his nose, reminding him of his mother's. He grew up different from the other kids. His mother was abandoned by his father, but she swore he was a good guy, and she eventually succumbed to an illness. Rico eventually turned into a demi-human after being experimented on by Solaris. Not being accepted by his father, he was eventually barred for his appearance since he wanted nothing to do with his demi-human son since he didn't look like a normal human being. The Kaiser walks in, surprised Rico was able to open the door. The eye scanner on the door could only be opened by him and his late wife. This means Rico is Kaiser Sigmund's son. The Kaiser calls for the guards to detain Rico and execute him for attempted assassination. We need to talk about this revelation. This is the beginning and the ending of Rico's character arc. He has the most underutilized character in the game. It's a shame too. His relationship with his father deserves to be explored more. It could have gone a long way into exploring the demi-humans more. Unfortunately, this was one of the cuts made in Disc 2 to tell the overarching story. I'll bring up the precise moment I think this event was supposed to take place, and I'll offer up my speculative thoughts. Faye and Citan need to get Veltal out of the gear hangar. They break through the air ducts, saving Rico. Gebler begins their assault on Nortune. They plan to blow up the entire reactor, so will need to divert the ship. Faye runs into Ellie and her squad. He begins to convince her to stop with the needless violence. Faye forces her to look at the destruction of Nortune, playing to her senses. Faye returns to help Rico fend off Domina. Ellie and the others fight at the reactor to stop them from hitting it. They are able to move it off course, but it heads straight towards the residential area. Faye and Rico show up, helping Ellie push it off course. The strain on their gear components causes both Steer and Veltal to overheat. Ellie sacrifices herself to save the residential area. She is able to push it on just a little longer since her gear is a Solaris grade. As her gear gives out, she is saved by a mysterious gear with wings. Once Ellie awakens, she joins Faye and Citan to find the Goliath. The plan is to hijack the Kislev battleship and get back to Ave. They'll need to force their way through the front gate, but Rico knocks out the guards, joining them. After making our way through the military base, we take the Goliath. Groff, not letting a good opportunity go by, takes this time to attack the Goliath and Faye, Ellie, and Citan along with it. Groff shows how strong he is by attacking the gears just in human form. He's not even using his gear during this fight. But Bart, being the ambitious sea pirate he is, decides to shoot down the Goliath, and Groff tumbles off into the ocean. but this causes the party to split. While Hammer and Citan are able to aboard the Yggdrasil safely, Ellie and Faye are left stranded on what remains of the Goliath. Faye and Ellie share a moment together on the ship. Faye asks her if she's going to go back to the military. She says no. She is going back to her country, though. This is a moment of reflection for both Faye and Ellie. It's the first real time we get a chance to see them really open up. A moment they both realize they needed each other. Remember how I said this game was made by a newlywed husband and wife? This scene shows that love a husband and wife have. That feeling of completeness your companion gives you. Xenogears shows the rough spots of that relationship as well. It's that moment you have when you find your soulmate. After thinking they may die here, a ship appears saving Faye and Ellie, the Thames. They are told to look around and find the captain. Meanwhile, the Ethos along with the elements are excavating something out at sea. The Yggdrasil appears to be under attack. Bart is below fighting. After a short fight with Dominia, she takes off with Ellie. Bart and Faye are unable to have a quick reunion, mentioning the red gear that attacked him. Bart conveniently found a model just like the Yggdrasil below where they sank. Using the parts salvageable from the old model, they were able to build upon it. The Yggdrasil docks at Thames and Bart thanks the captain. Margie is also here with them. Dominia is berating Ellie, smacking her and calling her a traitor. Miang said they looked at the footage of the underwater attack and it appears Dominia was the one who attacked first, not Ellie. Ellie had no other choice but to defend herself. Miang puts Ellie under her supervision. Ramses and Miang plan to attack the Yggdrasil head-on but take out the mechanics that let it submerge underwater. They plan to use Ellie to execute this. Citan shows up to undo what she did. It appears she was hypnotized by Miang. At the medical bay, Ellie is awake, unaware of how she got here. With the gears on their way, they plan to launch the Yggdrasil and attack the gears head-on. Ellie wants to join, and Citan says if she tries anything funny, he will shoot her himself. Damn, Citan has no remorse. Still, though, he's really showing that military training. Ramses somehow concludes Faye was the pilot of the red gear. After a fight, he destroys Faye. Ellie is able to use an arrow to blow out Ramses' main tank, causing him to flee. Back on the Thames, the medical expert says Faye is currently on life support. Nothing vital was hit. His cockpit did take a lot of damage. There is only one hope, and this is to take him to Ethos for treatment. In order to get there, though, they will have to talk to the Etoners, a sect of the Ethos known for purging wells. More on them later. A man named Jesse appears. A surprise to no one, Citan also knows him. We meet his daughter Primera, who is mute. We also meet Billy, who is Jesse's son. Billy says he can get us to the infirmary, asking Jesse to take Prim back to the orphanage. Billy tells us to meet him at Ethos headquarters. He's not too fond of his father, commenting on they are related by blood only. Ellie stays behind with Faye. After exploring the Ethos headquarters, we can finally take the unconscious Faye back to the Yggdrasil. Back at the orphanage, Billy tells us he grew up alone without his parents. He raised Prim alone, resorting to almost him selling his body for, how do I put this in YouTube terms? For adult-centered activities. The orphanage was started to ensure other kids wouldn't have to grow up like him and his sister. Sigurd walks in, followed by Jesse, who also seems to know each other. Billy knows Sigurd as well. Back at the orphanage, a man named Father Stone talks to Billy. They found the remains of the Ethos supply ship, which was attacked by Wells. Wells used to be humans, but for reasons unknown, they were mutated into mindless beings. That creature we fought back in D-Block sewers? Yeah, that was a well. Billy gives us a bit of backstory regarding his past. His father left when he was very young, training him in the art of guns. Jesse left shortly after. His mother, who was left behind, was killed by Wells. Father Stone showed up to save him. Billy trained under him and became an Etone to ensure other orphans had a place to live. Bart and company decide to help Billy take out the Wells as repayment for helping them with Faye. The ship is filled with Wells. We make quick work of them and learn how Billy works in battle. Billy uses guns and will need ammo for his attacks. Other than that, he plays like everyone else. Billy asks us to accompany him back to Ethos headquarters to give us a gift. Upon arriving at Ethos headquarters, it's been attacked by Solaris. For starters, Ethos was found 500 years ago as a way to quell the population into a false belief. They worked as a stand-in for Solaris interference. This happened when a giant war between the land dwellers and Solaris took place 500 years ago. The exact cause of this war was unknown. It caused Solaris to hide their floating city so the surface dwellers could not harm them any further. The Ethos have not only been excavating gears, but also excavating ruins in the Aqua VC, uncovering the lost civilization of Zeboim, a city from 4,000 years ago. Billy has a full-on existential crisis, and rightly so. His entire belief system, what he's believed for his entire life, has been nothing but a lie. Verlaine, an agent for Solaris, reveals the Pontiffs were nothing more than tools, and even the children of the orphanage were used to satisfy the desires of the Pontiffs and bishops. Verlaine retorts that the purge is judgment and nothing more. Billy, still clinging on to his faith, shoots back, only God can judge. Where does such a God exist? Bishop Stone appears, confirming it all but true, shooting Verlaine for talking too much. Jesse drops in, calling Stone by his real name, Stein. It's true, the Ethos was nothing more than an organization used to control the masses and build a false god. The Wells are also part of this plan from Ethos. A scene shifts to the Gazelle Ministry, plotting, stating the Ethos have outlived their purpose. Stone hops into a giant gear and heads to destroy the Thames. The party decides to follow. Meanwhile, another ship shows up, blasting the Thames fleet. On the ship is a man named Krelian, a man we will become very well acquainted with. What is his purpose right now remains to be seen. We only know he's after something in the Zeboim ruins. With the Wells attacking the Thames, it's time to hop in our gears and help out. Xenogears is a critique on organized religion, and it's as clear as day the Catholic Church inspired the Ethos. In fact, if you translate the Japanese, it just simply means the church, which was another one of the Honeywood things he tried to do to make Xenogears less controversial. This game was also released a few years before the Catholic Church adult activities scandal happened. You must understand, the Japanese do not hold Christian in reverence like the West does. Japanese kids grow up hearing stories from the Bible as if they are, well, stories. It's like how we read their stories of their gods to our children as nothing more than stories. In the West, we view Buddhism and Shintoism in a different light. We look at Buddhism in a Western lens, while they look at Christianity in an Eastern lens. Some people may find this offensive, but at the end of the day, I see it as nothing more than a work of fiction, and I think it should just be taken as that. Nothing disrespectful, just another culture trying to understand, or use in context for their stories, of what another culture believes in. Something every culture, every story, has done since the dawn of time. The party heads into the Zeboim ruins. Accessing a computer, we find a young girl made up of a nanomachine colony. Before we can do anything with her, Bishop Stone shows up and wants the girl. It seems Krelian wants her, but why? The scene shifts to Faye in the infirmary. He looks like he's had some sort of dream of a woman who looks like Ellie, the nanomachine girl, and the man who looks a lot like himself. Faye, in the dream, locks himself in a room with the child. First Lacan, now this guy. Just who in the hell is Faye? The party chases down Bishop Stone to get her back, but the mysterious Red Warrior appears. His name is Id, and if you know anything about Freudian psychology, you might be familiar with that term. But more on this later. Forced into a fight with Id, we are unable to defeat him. Wiseman shows up, subduing him so we can escape. Back on the Yggdrasil, we need to find Faye, who is down in the hangar chilling next to Veltal. It doesn't take long for Stone to find us. He's been upgraded via nanomachines by Krelian, rocking that red skull look. Groff shows up offering Stone the power. This makes his gear invincible due to his pure hatred. Stone also reveals his immense hatred for Billy and his sister and confesses he sent the Wells to kill Billy's mother. Stone also reveals the truth of the Wells, telling us they were once human, chosen by Krelian to merge with God. Jesse jumps in to help. He offers up his gear as a weapon he calls the Jesse Cannon. Billy is able to blast Stone's shield off. This is played up as a huge sacrifice that will kill Jesse. No, dude's alive. Just retrofit his gear with an eject button. After defeating Stone, Jesse reveals he left Solaris after learning of Krelian's plan to merge land dwellers with a gear. He followed one such gear down here. This gear was controlled by a man named Nikolai. It was through Nikolai Jesse learned of Krillion's plan. He believes Nikolai's daughter is hiding in Shavat, a girl by the name of Maria Balthazar. With this information, it's time we head to Shavat. In order to get to Shavat, though, we're going to have to climb Babel Tower. And oh gosh, is this one of the more annoying platforming areas of Xenogears. Babel Tower feels very off for starters. It's a technological structure we haven't seen before, yet it looks very familiar. This certainly wouldn't be the first time we've come across an unexplained technology. Like Zeboim, it feels like it came from a different era. Cue Omen, one of my favorite songs from the game. It's ominous, mysterious, and gives off a vibe that what you're climbing is part of something much, much bigger. Babel Tower has to be one of the most annoying dungeons in the game. If you hated platforming in Xenogears, you're going to have a full-on blast with this one. While I think many over-exaggerate just how bad it is, it would be significantly less annoying if it wasn't for those pesky random battles and some enemies you can't run from, forcing you to fight them. It took me 2.5 hours to get through this dungeon because I kept screwing up. Midway through, we must fight Ramses, who was wounded from the last fight we had with him. Unable to fight effectively, he's forced to retreat. Shavat launches a beam at their flagship, putting it into critical condition. Once upon the tower, we are attacked by a gear. I guess we're fighting this thing. After a fight with the pilot, she introduces herself as Maria. She is a resident of Shavat. Maria says Queen Zephyr wishes to speak with us. Taking some time in Shavat, we can learn a little bit about the history of the Omnigears and the Anima relics. We can also learn about the war 500 years ago and why Shavat is basically at a stalemate. And perhaps the biggest revelations lie within the reveal of the limiters which were installed in the lambs by Krillon. This basically allows them to control the thoughts of the lambs to avoid yet another warlike one that took place 500 years ago. Yui is also here with the rest of the village of Lahan. Yui left and brought them all here. She explains they understand Faye was not to blame, even though forgiveness is something Faye cannot bring himself to have. It's also revealed by them that the Gazelle Ministry and the Shavat are after the Anima relics to make Omnigears. Only 12 of these Anima relics exist. The Queen was alive 500 years ago and went through a life extension process for punishment alongside some of the other Shavat citizens. Shavat shields are brought down and Domina tries to steal Zebson, the gear we fought in Babel Tower, but is unable to. Invaders make their way to Shavat. We must encounter them and stop them. Maria's father, Nikolai, uses living organisms to build his gear that could connect with the user like the Anima relics. This was likely due to Solaris forcing him to actually experiment on this rather than necessarily wanting to. Oxen shows up, Zebson's brother gear, and attacks. It seems Nikolai's brain has been planted in the gear and corrupted, losing control. Maria must use Zebson to confront her father and hesitates to do so. Choo-Choo grows to a huge height to fight him, and with the help of Maria, they're able to defeat Nikolai. This music does not fit this scene at all, plain and simple. Even the composer Yasunori Mitsuda wasn't happy of this song being used. My biggest problem with this song is it's Maria's theme. Since we have arrived at Shavat, this is a leitmotif that has continued to play. This song has been building up to this moment for Maria. Just simply changing the song to Night of Fire while Choo-Choo grows and switching it to this song when Maria runs out to confront Oxen would have been much better. It would have just made the scene feel infinitely better and not felt like it robbed Maria of that character moment. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the theme here being used for Choo-Choo to grow. It feels like it more fits Maria than it actually does Choo-Choo. It's revealed soon after that Nissan is under direct attack from Shakan. It seems Shakan is after the Omni Gear left behind by Rani Fatima 500 years ago. 500 years ago, Shavat and Solaris were at war. Shavat joined forces against Solaris to win the war. After the war ended, Solaris understood they could no longer hide in plain sight. They sealed themselves off behind a shield, making it invisible for the rest of the world to see. The floating city of Solaris became a myth. If you were going to make it to Solaris, you needed to destroy the shield. These 3 gates were constructed to power Solaris' shield. One of 3 wise men, Gasper, removes the limiters. We have access to elemental death blows now. Ellie also reacts to one of the gears in Shavat. It's one of the Omni Gears. The party splits into 2 groups, deciding to take advantage of Shakan's trek to find one of the secret weapons. Shakan plans to dig up Margie's mother to use her retina to open the path to the weapon where Bart's ancestors stored it. It seems Shakan has figured out the Fatima family secret. The Jasper is the retinal pattern of the Fatima bloodline. Since it requires both eyes, Bart is unable to get in, requiring the assistance of Margie. We see the same symbolism of the one-winged angel from Nisan, in Faye and Ellie, and in Bart and Margie. Inside is a weapon able to also fire a giant laser. This weapon is called Fort Jasper. Before they are able to do much, Shakan appears planning to lure Bart into opening it and get a hold of the gear. They are captured by Shakan and Margie runs off to operate the gear. Citan and Sigurd are worried about Bart. Fending off Shakan and his goons, Bart is unable to open the door alone without Margie, but thanks to Sigurd's eye, they are able to get in. We'll come back to this later since we now know that Sigurd and Bart are somehow related. Margie was able to operate the Omni Gear with her mind by fending off some of the soldiers. Bart hops into the gear. It operates by connecting to the pilot's mind. This eliminates the need to think and then physically control the gear. In essence, it works like a real human body would. Think and attack. Margie passes out from the gunshot wound to her leg. Examined by Citan, she is okay but will require medical attention. Shakan plans on going to the gate near Nisan, so we follow in pursuit. Graf shows up to grant Shakan the power. It makes no difference. With Shakan defeated, we can return Bart to the throne of Ave. His father wishes for Ave to become a republic, or more accurately, share the wealth of the king with the people. King Edbart seemed to have a great deal of love for his subjects. However, there was something else in Edbart's will regarding Sigurd. Bart couldn't sleep, so he asks Myson about Sigurd and where he was born. Before Edbart met Bart's mother, he fell in love with a woman from another religious sect outside of Ethos in Nisan. They had a child together. She left the king after she was diagnosed with an illness, never telling Edbart why she left. Bart confronts Sigurd. Edbart always treated Sigurd like a son and wished to have his inheritance split between his 2 boys and the people, so Sigurd is Bart's half-brother. I appreciate this. It's not the traditional bastard son trope. You know, the king gets drunk, knocks up a fair maiden, and at the bar, boom, she pops out a kid a few months later. With the Nisan gate destroyed, it's time to hunt down the other 2. One we know lies at the bottom of Ethos. Citan concludes the mirrors and the cannons on Babel Tower were used by the same advanced civilization as Fort Jasper. He concludes that they could use the mirrors to blow up the gate at the bottom of Ethos by pivoting the Fort Jasper laser towards the mirrors and then reflecting it off the mirrors to the Ethos headquarters. With it decided, the party splits in 2 and off we go. The elements show up to intervene at both locations, but the party is able to ward them off and successfully destroy the second gate. With Ethos being completely destroyed, the party deduces the final gate must be in the ocean since they are triangular and intelligence Ellie has from Gebler points to it being underwater. Meanwhile, the Gazelle Ministry is upset at the very notion Ramses was unable to stop them, doubting his resolve. Trillian has plans to awaken the Mother, also known as the Antitype, through Emeralda since she was created by the Contact and the Antitype. These are 2 terms we have no clue what they mean, but again, we will soon find out. Even playing this a second time and having forehand knowledge of these terms, it's a bit weird. I get why they do this, but for new players it's really hard to keep track of all these terms. It makes these scenes cryptic, sure, but it gives off this vibe of mystery, which is just clearly went for, but it does make it hard to follow. And by the time these names are revealed in the plot, most new players have probably already forgotten them. Unless you've played the game and going back a second time, these are terms you're not going to understand. We return to the Thames to talk to the captain about a way to submerge underwater. Thanks to Thames, the party's gears are equipped with the ability to submerge underwater. In the gate, we fight the girl from Zeboim. Another gear observes the fight while gathering information. He tells us to take the girl since he got what he needed. Emeralda calls Faye Kim. Why she calls him Kim and who Kim is really isn't something we know at this point, but Kim was a resident of the Zeboim civilization 4,000 years ago. He was the scientist in charge of creating Emeralda, and Emeralda basically sees Kim as a father-like figure, so because Faye looks like Kim, that's why she calls him Kim. Because Queen Zephyr and the party concoct a plan to destroy the gate inside of Solaris using Zeebsen's cannon, but the party will need to split to avoid drawing attention. Citan's wife Yui shows up, afraid he and the others will get hurt. Yui gives Citan his sword from when he was an element. Jesse makes a cryptic comment about he will not hesitate to shoot Citan in the back if he turns to the dark side. Seeing how cryptic Citan can get and his connections to Solaris, this sets up something pretty freaking dark. Flying to Solaris, Zeebsen was able to break through. Faye hops into the transporter to find any information out he can, separating from Ellie. Faye finds Ellie and we learn a little bit about the class structure. Third block is the worker block. Everyone here is categorized by their molecular structure so they can be identified. Ellie and Faye catch a speech by Emperor Cain saying the destruction of the gate was planned and they will be returning to Mahan soon, God's paradise, to be immortal. Trillian appears and reveals he is the true ruler of Solaris. Faye seems to recognize him, well, sort of, like he feels like he should know who he is. A flashback ensues and we see Lacan. Who is Lacan? Well, we'll find out. But what is clear is Trillian and Lacan knew each other and were filled with kindness. Trillian says they are going to purge the lambs that destroyed the gate and send them to the Soylent system. More on this later. Faye begins to raise his voice a little, worried and frustrated. Ellie tries to calm him down but is unable to, eventually catching wind of the guards. The two escape and make their way back to Ellie's house. Ellie says hello to her mother, convincing her that Faye is part of the military. Ellie pretty much reveals she is a lamb, a daughter of a third-class citizen, but her parents treat her as if they were her own. Her nanny worked for them and her father hid their identity. Her father more than likely had an affair with the nanny, but it never stopped her mom from treating Ellie as if she was her own. Faye and Ellie shower and relax a little bit before firing up her dad's computer to learn about the whereabouts of the rest of the party. Ellie's father barges in, furious she is using his computer, and calls the guards. Ellie defends Faye, stating if he's going to shoot him, she won't allow it. Her father, Eric, slaps her, and Faye says he doesn't want to be the reason a father and daughter fight. Eric respects this. He shoots the window, intending to tell them that a burglar has escaped. Faye leaves and is caught by a guard who turns out to be Citan. Together, they make their way to the trash compactor, but need a card to access it. Ellie shows up with the card she got from her dad. It seems her mother convinced her father to let her go and help her friends. The Imperial Guard shows up, demanding Eric hand over Ellie as per request by Corellian. He refuses to turn her over, even at the risk of becoming a third-class citizen. Citan, Ellie, and Faye make their way through the plant, and the two eat the food from the Soylent system, which is also responsible for their medicine used in Solaris. The fact Citan just sits by and lets them eat the food without saying anything, I just find really disgusting. What is Soylent, you ask? Well, the reveal is made. The Soylent system creates food using humans, or wells to be more specific. These plants use nanomachines inside the populace of the lamb to turn them into wells.
You gotta tell them! Silent breed is people!
Dominia's people were the first to be used in this experiment. This is a clear nod to the movie Soylent Green. a movie whose entire premise was about overpopulating the Earth and the people living on the streets then being turned into food and gathered up after they died or after they self-deleted, and then turned into Soylent Green and fed the people as food. It's an alright movie. It's become a meme for the end line. After the Soylent system, we make our way through Corellian's lab. Citan tells us 10,000 years ago, Cain and the Gazelle Ministry were born. They were supposed to be immortal, but the Gazelle were killed during the Diablos invasion. Cain is the only one left. The Ministry was uploaded to a digital cube. This is the floating ball we've seen at multiple points of the game now. Initially, the Soylent system was set up to feed the Emperor and the Gazelle Ministry, but was turned into a place to feed humans. The memory cubes were also set up to gain information from every living being. This was known as Project M. Ellie starts to question just who Citan is. The military didn't even know about what Project M was. The lights shut off, and Citan and Ellie disappear. Faye enters a room full of TVs and is captured, showing the mysterious red gear on screen. The Ministry needs the Animus to achieve new bodies, planning to use the bodies of the other party members. This is a bit convoluted, but it can be broken down this way. The Animus are the bodies the Gazelle intend to use by inhabiting the DNA, while the Anima was their soul. In essence, this means for events yet to be unveiled, the Gazelle were killed, halting their plans to resurrect God. They need bodies they could use to then merge with the Anima relics and become one with God. It's also revealed Citan works for the Emperor and is one of the guardian angels of Solaris. It's revealed to Faye with him they are able to resurrect God, awaken Mahan, making it their arc into outer space. Corellian pulls Ellie's report incident from a year ago, seeing as her ether power was more than just an enhancement of drugs. She awakened her other inner self. Corellian begins to research nanomachines and was able to perfect them thanks to Emeralda. Realizing she is the mother, he understands Miang and Lacan's motives. Ellie has a connection to the Ouroboros ring as part of her DNA. This will begin to make more sense as we learn just what, or perhaps I should say who, Ellie is. Citan appears and begins to antagonize Faye, almost as if he's trying to make him mad. I could do a whole breakdown on what Citan is saying about people needing a place or a country to exist, but I'll keep it brief. Certain ways of life and certain beliefs are incompatible with one another's country and beliefs. Citan is saying something. It's easier to build an illusion of a place to belong than let people choose. It's one of my major critiques about Marxism and communism. These systems always strip away the individual in favor of the collective. Citan finishes by saying now we can finally talk to id. If you didn't put two and two together, yes, Faye is id, the mysterious red-haired warrior we've seen the entire game. I remember seeing this for the first time. My brain was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Look back though, and every time the red-haired warrior or gear appears, Faye is either unconscious, sleeping, or out of the party. It was id that awoke in Lahan, destroying the village. It was id who killed Rico's lackey, something hinted at by the different collars. The game is so good at feeding you with breadcrumbs, you're able to just look back at it and go, oh shit, I was led on. A well-executed plot twist I never saw coming. Ramses appears with Ellie, asking her where Faye was. It seems he is still obsessed with destroying him. On a mental stabilizer, it is clear Ramses has become completely fractured by his inability to destroy Faye. Coming to, Faye sees Bart and Billy are in the room with him. It seems Citan baited Corellian and led them into his lab to remove their psychological limiters connecting them to the Gazelle Ministry. He needed Faye alone to fulfill his mission given to him by Emperor Cain, only saying the Emperor is on their side. In order to be freed from Solaris, they had to become aware of who Solaris really was. Solaris was the only place where they could be freed from Solarian control. Citan also came to the realization Ellie doesn't have a limiter, something only officers in the military can have removed by permission from the Ministry. Billy helps Faye retrieve Ellie and make their way out. Citan joins Jesse in destroying the gate in Solaris. Ramses shows up, furious Citan is betraying him too and siding with Faye. Below are the rest of the party, Ellie's parents, and Hammer. They split into two groups who make their way out of Solaris. On the bridge, Hammer betrays the party, pointing a gun at them, promising Krellian he would bring back Ellie. He didn't do this out of malice, but fear. I wasn't strong like Faye or Rico, lacked the wits like the rest of the party had. He felt like a normal man. He had to do this. Ellie's mother walks towards him, shaking, telling him she too is normal. She isn't a soldier like her husband or her daughter. She's born and raised in a regular family and never even touched a gun before. Ellie walks back to Faye and Hammer fires, shooting Ellie's mother. He runs from the shock. Man, I felt this. Sure, Hammer could be annoying, but he wasn't worthless. Dude had a knack for intel. Hammer was their friend, someone they all liked. Yet, deep down, he didn't have any powers. He wasn't anyone special. He just felt like a normal dude. He wanted to be strong like his friends. And when Krellian threatened him, he didn't have the strength to stand up. In a lot of ways, Hammer's just kind of like us. And I think that's a hard thing to internalize. Graf and the Executioner from earlier show up and the party fights them in a valiant effort, but it's not enough. Ellie's father shows up with a gear to protect her, but is ultimately taken down by the Executioner. Man, to lose both of your parents at the same time would be so hard. The Executioner lets off an immense amount of power, as does Ellie. Her ether is out of control. The boy with the hair appears along with a weird pendant and Faye's gear is summoned. Faye is about to waken Id, and if he needed any more proof they were the same, well, here you go. Trillian appears as the bridge where they stood is broken, and Niang reveals herself to be the Executioner. Faye destroys Solaris and heads for the Yggdrasil, planning on destroying that too. Ellie takes her gear and is able to subdue him by reawakening Faye, but is wounded in the process. The sheer power alone Faye wills to destroy an entire civilization is insane. This wasn't just a small town, it was a living, thriving empire. The big bad, the city in control of everything, just gone in the blink of an eye. Bound by the dark, cruel destiny of God, we will soon have answers. Citan finally explains that Faye is Id, and the Emperor wanted Citan to see if he was the one who was to usher the people of this world into a new horizon, calling him the Anomaly. Faye suffers from dissociative identity disorder. Id's true motivation is unclear, but at the time of Lahan, it seems a third personality awakened in Faye. One Id calls the Coward. Id was able to dominate the personality, but has lost some semblance of control thanks to the Coward. Citan all but confirms Id fears the Coward because if this personality could gain control, it would absorb all three personalities into one and cease to exist. Basically, it would be Faye accepting all the trauma that has happened to him. Since Id is suppressing the events taking place, this is why Faye has no memory of it. Graf also wants to keep this personality present but is unable to control it. It's clear Graf was able to do something similar though through Lacan after manipulating the Diablos core. They decide it is best for Faye and the rest of the world to be carbon frozen. Ellie isn't happy about this, but agrees to go along. Ellie talks to Faye, who was told by Citan about Id and his carbon freezing. Ellie wants to run off where Graf and the war don't exist, seeing as she has nowhere to go. He declines in fear that Id may appear again. He is afraid of hurting Ellie. Eventually, Faye does give in and they leave together. The rest of the party shows up to see them off. The Gazelle are furious with Emperor Cain, feeling his human body is compromising his judgment. Trillian shows up. The Gazelle are worried about Faye and need him destroyed. Trillian has sent Ramses with his gear connected to the anima relic to defeat him. Ramses is unable to control his anger, and the combination of the Omni gear isn't helping. He is able to beat Faye with ease, but wounds Ellie in the process. Faye is afraid she might die due to the blood loss. That concludes Disc 1. I can't imagine Xenogears ending on this cliffhanger. There is so much left unexplained. Did Ellie survive? Will Faye gain control of id? So many questions, and we barely have started to get answers. Moving into Disc 2, it's going to be hard to cover. The plot is revealed at a breakneck speed. So much happens so fast, it all just kind of blends together. I'll give it my best. Let's break down this beast of a disc. Let's dive into the notorious Disc 2. Disc 2 starts off with Faye and Ellie having a dream of Lacan and the Holy Mother Sophia. Before she became the Holy Mother, her name was Ellie. This will be important later. Lacan needed to return home to grab paint, but lied because he wished to spend more time with Sophia. He was in love with her. It's clear Sophia had feelings for Lacan despite being the hope for the world. She wanted things to be the way she wanted them to be. She didn't want to be the hope for the world. She wanted to live a normal life. Just the two of them together. If it hasn't become clear by now, Faye and Ellie keep getting reincarnated during different eras and are always drawn to each other. Lacan and Sophia are just one of the many reincarnations of Faye and Ellie over the long 10,000 years. Upon awakening, Faye and Ellie find themselves in tubes being patched up with nanomachines after the fight with Ramses. Some weird-looking man named Tara has been patching them up. Citan has arrived as well. It seems he had information about where Faye and Ellie ended up. Tara was the one who taught the nanotechnology to Krillian. It's not really known if he regrets it, but considering he's helping these two, I would imagine he does. It's moments like this I wish Xenogears would explore more. There are so many story elements in Xenogears that unfortunately just get glossed over because they ran out of time and the pacing of Disc 2 had significantly been changed. Again, as I have reiterated over and over, I am glad Disc 2 has ended up the way that it is, but there are moments within the game, and this is one of many, I wish would have gotten fleshed out just a little bit more. Ellie awakens from the tube, and the two share a brief but heartfelt conversation outside. Tara has a plan to use nanomachines to remove the limiters from the rest of humanity. In order to achieve this, they will need to make use of the energy base. He also gives Faye a bracelet capable of keeping his emotions intact. Basically, it's going to suppress id for now. What's kinda cool is it uses actual terms. If you've had any bout with depression or anxiety, these terms will be very familiar to you. He also installed this into Veltal, allowing access to System id for Faye's gear. Ave and Kislev are in the midst of a peace treaty in Shavad, but Solaris has shown up. A man from Shavat shows up asking for Faye's help. Tara berates him, knowing they only want him because of the system and the capability of using id, or rather System id, he just installed. Ellie tells him to go. She will head up the mass driver, the energy base, to release the nanomachines. She wants Faye to protect innocent people in both countries since they too are victims of Solaris. Citan accompanies Ellie with the use of his Omnigear Fenrir he left with Gasper back at Shavat for emergencies. Old Man Ball helped Tara fix Faye's gear. I should probably mention somewhere Tara is one of the sages of Shavat, making Tara Melchior. Emeralda is also present as well. Ellie begins to wonder if her love was just something she felt for Faye after her parents died. She wishes them to be apart and see what they are both capable of to see if this love still lasts. A very grounded take to have. Was it the trauma and the need for comfort that drew them together, or was it something much deeper? Graf appears to talk to Tara. He was the one who brought them to Tara in the first place. A bit weird, but it will make sense in a little while. Tara mentions how they look both like you and her, calling him Lacan. Yes, Graf is Lacan, the reincarnation of Faye that lived 500 years ago. How or why this is possible is currently unknown, but don't fret, dear viewer. Everything will soon be unveiled. Krillian talks to the Gazelle Ministry and they bring up a couple of new terms. One we've heard before is the antitype and refer to Ellie as someone as Mother. We'll uncover this more later. It's clear Krillian has some feelings for Ellie, or at least the version of Sophia from 500 years ago. Krillian is plotting to do something with the Gazelle Ministry. Ramses shows back up to fight Faye. This acts as a tutorial for System id. Faye wipes the floor with Ramsus. What becomes very clear is Ramsus is no longer even a threat to Faye. The more Ramsus tries to take on Faye, the more he fails. Simply put, Ramsus lacks the resolve that Faye has, and it continually makes him weak because of it. It's the continual drive for revenge that makes Ramsus weak. After the fight with Ramsus, he runs off. Faye is uncertain why he is so fixated on defeating him. He's almost developed an obsessive rivalry with Faye. Ellie, Citan, and Emeralda leave to release the nanomachines. This base is located in Zeboim. Zeboim was once an advanced city full of technology. Ellie sums it up nicely. It was a graveyard for a race of people who destroyed each other over pride and arrogance, a stark contrast to our war-torn nuclear weapons we have now, a glimpse into our future if we don't tread carefully. Meanwhile, Faye was able to help push back Solarian forces into Shavad. Solaris used a giant defense ship to attack Nisan while Kislev and Ave were discussing a peace treaty. The only thing capable of defeating it is a giant mech in Kislev. Remember that red thing in the central district of Kislev? Yeah, that was a giant warship created by Rani Fatima 500 years ago to battle Solaris. The Yggdrasil was initially part of its design. Bart learned this from ancient records left behind in the library. While I get the spectacle of this gear and this plot point as a fight, I can't help but feel this was left incomplete. I am also hesitant to criticize it too harshly for running out of time for reasons, but damn, this cutscene could have been so awesome. Xenogears has been building up to the conclusion of the War of Kislev and Ave, but it just feels rushed. This ongoing conflict that Disc 2 had built up trying to resolve is just brushed up in this small little plot point with no real relevance of how these two warring nations even came together to really work together and form this treaty. How did this treaty happen? These are questions Xenogears unfortunately never got a chance to explain. It's unfortunate because while this probably would have been a 2 to 3 hour section within the initial game itself, it's been reduced down to a couple of paragraphs where it just summarizes things at a very quick pace. It goes unsaid, but there is a real reason that Solaris has kept this war going on for as long as they have, why this conflict has existed for 500 years and it has had no resolution. Kislev and Ave once used to make up the Fatima dynasty. The ancient weapons combined between them could have devastated Solaris if they were left to continue. They kept the war efforts going to keep the status quo intact. I think the original plan was to explore Rico's relationship with his father Sigurd, fleshing out Rico's character here instead of sidelining him like they did. There's a throwaway line by Hammer later on that cements this. Hammer says something along the lines of taking his place as Kaiser. It leads me to believe he at least found peace with his father or something happened to the Kaiser that led this treaty to finally be fulfilled. Something else of note here is Kaiser Sigmund himself. He has an uncanny resemblance to Sigmund Freud, and if you learned anything about Xenogears, this isn't a coincidence. What themes of psychology were going to be explored here? Freudian concepts cut from the game. Your guess is as good as mine, but it most certainly was tied to Rico and his father Sigmund. Part of me wonders if this was to explore the Freudian concept of the Oedipus complex a bit more. But this is speculation purely on my part. Rico's story beat also draws some parallels to the Greek tragedy of Oedipus as well, leading me to believe my speculation may have something to do with it. With the weapon destroyed, peace was finally brought to the continent of Ignis after 550 years of division. It didn't last long though. The release of the limiters unlocked mankind's true form, the Wells. Humans were chosen by the Gazelle to become one with the flesh of God. The process of becoming a Well is extremely painful, which can only be satisfied by the consumption of human blood. Once they turn into Wells, the creatures are broken down and fed into God directly, to help resurrect God.
And so then it's the end of consciousness and free will for individuals, as we know, and a true 2.0 in a very bad way, hive mind consciousness with an AI jacked into everyone, knowing our hopes and dreams, delivering it to us, not in some PKD wirehead system where we plug in and give up on consciousness because of unlimited pleasure, but because we were already wired in and absorbed before we knew it by giving over our consciousness to this system by our daily decisions that it was able to manipulate and control into a larger system.
One such creature coming from this was the Sufal Mass. The Sufal Mass breaks out in a containment chamber and the party tries to defeat it. Ellie grabs Citan's sword and cuts her hand to ease its pain, feeding it her own blood. Xenogears goes on to describe this scenario where the less fortunate feel more fortunate and don't understand what it's like to suffer. On the other hand, the less fortunate don't want to listen to reason from the more fortunate. It creates this weird dichotomy where the haves don't want to be eaten, but they don't understand the suffering the wells go through. Ellie becomes the gap between these two different mindsets, with her taking the role of this generation's Holy Mother, the living incarnation of Sophia from 500 years ago. Ellie took on this role because of the guilt she felt for releasing the limiters. It wasn't the limiters that caused this though, but a virus released into the air just before the destruction of Solaris by Corellian himself. There is a parallel here to Sophia and Ellie being the Christ figure in this scenario, the blood of Christ being willingly given to those less fortunate or the sinful. I'm also drawing some parallels to the real-world disease of leprosy and how very often lepers were treated in the biblical times. It wasn't an ideal scenario, but you can see these parallels. On one hand, those with leprosy don't want to get it, but those with it are outcast and left to suffer. It's this unfortunate scenario that really is just a byproduct of mankind. If you think you'd be different, be the human to bridge this gap, really ponder how you treated someone who was sick 5 years ago. So much as a cough sent people into a frenzy. There's also this weird screwed up parallel here on how the elite and wealthy prey upon the less fortunate. I don't want to get too into the weeds of the economical side of this, but I'm pretty sure many of you can relate, and if you look deeper, you can draw the parallels to Solaris and what's going on. Ellie tells the masses this was but a plan by the Solarian ministry to bring forth racial purification, to stop fighting, even death, stating if you're devoid of a heart, what does all this mean? This is straight up the mark of the beast in Xenogears or some variation of it. Watching the last days of humanity play out. A longing of people will be immortal and be one with God, but they will not be able to die. An image of Sophia appears. This is the way Faye sees her, since somehow he is connected to Lacan. This is the unfortunate reality of the world in its current state. Ellie offers to give them as much of her flesh as she can. She implores them to not give away their dignity by killing others. The party destroys all of the Soylent systems on the planet and free the people being held in each location, taking the ones mutated back to Nissan for treatment. Those who were mutated only mildly were treated with Tara's nanomachines being able to return to normal by reconstruction of their original bodies. However, those who had mutated further were not so lucky. They were brought back to resemble humans as much as they possibly could. The Gazelle Ministry has taken advantage of the situation and plans to activate the Geisha Key, referred to in Japanese as the Lesser Gosha Key, a nod to Solomon. Before they can, however, Cain interferes. The Ministry are furious the Emperor is trying to stop the rise of God. Everything began to settle down after the destruction of the Soylent system. The party began to hunt for the Anima relics, the catalyst needed to transform their gears into Omnigears. Using the old records kept by Zephyr and her people, the party was able to get clues about the whereabouts of the last remaining relics. Heading to the ruins of these ancient civilizations, they were able to retrieve a couple of the relics. Billy's gear resonates with the Anima relic, but before we can leave, the elements show up, and in the most Transformer shit I've ever seen, they combine and create one badass looking gear, I must say. The Gazelle are looking to get rid of Cain so they can activate the key. They ask Miang if she can do it. Ellie has felt something terrible was about to happen to Nissan, so she returned while they looked for the relic, explaining it was a feeling she couldn't shake off. Tara's nanomachines were getting stronger with time. All humans would be able to return to their original form. It was during her return Ramses appeared looking for Faye, causing an explosion. This guy is desperate. At this point, I was tired of him, to be honest. The man cannot let go of his desires, but we will soon understand what makes Ramses tick. Ramses was initially born to be a peak human, able to merge with the anima relics and become powerful like Cain. However, he was rejected and rose from the depths of the trash on his own, finding his own will to continue. Driven by purpose, he needed to be the best in order to feel purpose. Ellie says he craved more love than anything else. Perhaps it would be more accurate to call it acceptance. He needed a place to feel like he belonged. Somebody who saw the potential inside of him and didn't just treat him as an outcast, a reject to society, if you will. Miang and Krelian convince Ramses through some sort of mind trick that if he wants to become strong, he must kill Cain, who he was originally built as a clone of. The final relic lies within the first civilization created nearly 10,000 years ago. Making our way through the final relic, we are able to upgrade Rico's gear, but Hammer appears with a gear retrofitted to him. Dude's become a giant machine. This sucks. Hammer wasn't one craving power to be bad, he wanted to find power that he could be strong like his friends, feel like he belonged, help out the people he had created a bond with. Faye begins to question if Hammer was happy with a brief moment of joy for attaining power, or a look of relief for being destroyed because of the mutation caused upon him. Hammer does have a line to Rico basically saying he was next in line to be Kaiser, insinuating his information skills were top-notch. It's a sad scenario. It goes to show just because you're not strong or helpful in other areas, it doesn't mean you don't have talents in other areas. Faye beats himself up over this and Ellie cries. She hated herself for not being able to do anything to help him. Faye saw her cry like that and knew he couldn't let her continue to fight like this. Knowing full well what was happening to Ellie, he saw the grief that was overcoming her, the burden of this new role she had taken upon herself. She could no longer deal with the traumas of war, and that's part of the reason he lashed out against her. The party, doing what they do best, tell Faye he might have been a little too harsh on her and go to apologize. This leads to a romantic night between the two where they share a bed and participate in adult activities. This shows Xenogears' aptitude to go beyond just what a traditional Japanese RPG is. It shows the more mature side of a relationship, the ups and downs, the flow and ebbs, the arguments and discussions, and the outright disagreements between two people who love each other. It isn't trying to build up this fairy tale love story that so many Japanese RPGs, especially back then, were going for. It builds up a real scenario of what two people who fall in love have to deal with. It shows how realistic these characters are, giving them real motivations and things they have to overcome. It grounds them in reality, and Xenogears' story is stronger for it. It is moments like this that I think make Xenogears stand out against so many of its other JRPG contemporaries and set it apart not even from JRPGs in the past, but JRPGs today. Krelian and Ramses show up to kill Cain. With Cain gone and the anima relics aligned, the Gazelle Ministry can finally awaken God. With the access of the Geisha Key, the people began to turn into whales. Even those who had not mutated were also turned. Howling in pain, it was as if the people of Earth were calling out to God to awaken Mahanan, the paradise from the sky. Mahanan begins to rise from the sea, and the resting place of God has now appeared. The paradise from the sky talked about in legends. It was decided the party was going to go to Mahanan and fight whatever lied there. Ellie stays behind and gathers people at Nisan to comfort them. Before they leave, Ellie and Margie have a conversation saying all men want to do is leave women behind when it gets dangerous. Ellie says that, but I don't think it's true. They want someone who will protect the place they can return home to. I don't think a stronger quote has ever been said about going off to war. To extrapolate on this, it might be the most real thing this game has ever said. Men may see women as something to protect and shield their eyes from the horrible natures of the world, but men also have a desire for a place to return home to. A man's sole purpose is to provide and support his family, something I've become increasingly aware of lately. I've watched my own dad have a bit of an existential crisis himself as he's begun to realize his aging body can't do what it did and he's unable to provide for his family in the ways he was able to do so in the past. Flying to the ship, things start to come into perspective. This was the ship from the beginning cutscene of the game, the Eldritch. The ship crash landed here 10,000 years ago. If you haven't put it together, the Tower of Babel, Fort Jasper, and much of the ancient technology were all parts of the Eldritch. Basically, everything left on this planet does in some way, shape, or form all go back to that original cutscene, to the Eldritch. Everything built in this civilization came from the Eldritch. Inside, they come across a grotesque-looking alien, a giant, if you will. Is this God? This boss fight can be a bit challenging if you don't know what to do. Deus will send a spell out that halves everyone's HP, including his. If you wait, you're able to defeat him in one turn. Hitting him otherwise will cause him to heal for 16,000 HP. This was part of God, not God itself. Inside, we make our way to two giant yellow structures. As Faye puts it, it was big enough to swallow all of Bledavik. It puts into perspective just how massive of a ship the Eldritch actually was. The giant computer was called Raziel. On the computer was a detail of a large unmanned weapon and a battalion of weapons traveling from star system to star system on one gigantic mothership carrying them. It can be surmised at this point Deus, this weapon, was what brought down the Eldritch at the beginning of the game. Raziel is also a nod to Raziel, many of the Kabbalistic references in Xenogears known as the Keeper of Secrets or Secret of God. And considering this computer that reveals the secrets behind everything, it's a very fitting name. The game uses the name Yahweh due to Honeywood asking them to change it, but yes, the devs of Xenogears were initially going to go with the name Yahweh, the name of the Hebrew god. The creature they just defeated was the nucleus of this machine. It's part machine and part biological, hence why it needs wells to resurrect itself. The party was also on the verge of uncovering the secrets of the Zohar, the central neurocircuit and power source controlling the entire system from the weapons to the mothership, but Krelian appeared. Citan tries to unlock its secrets while we fight Graf. It seems Graf has plans, calling Faye imperfect because he lacks the wrath, ultimately saying Faye won't be able to give in to his innate ability unless he gives over complete control to Faye. Krelian stops Graf from being able to do much and plans to crucify them to lure Ellie out, who is needed for Krelian's plan. They gather up the gears and take them to Golgotha. Another translation error here meant to be Golgotha, the place Christ was crucified. Ellie's fears are confirmed as she can feel something has happened to Faye and the others. There, she travels to Shavat. It's here Krelian drops a transmission telling her to come to Golgotha if she wants to save them. Hopping into the Omnigear that was left in Shavat, she heads to Golgotha. Faye isn't too happy she has come, telling her to run and save herself. Krelian recognizes the gear she brought as one of the ones from Shavat and wants her to fight a couple of underlings in it. Why? To see if she is indeed the mother he has been searching for, the Holy Mother Sophia. This was initially Sophia's gear to begin with. After losing, Ellie finds strength to get up and defeat them. Krelian, a man to his word, does let them go. Faye begins to wonder why Krelian would allow them to be left alive. What was the real reason Krelian didn't have them killed? The Gazelle have recovered the body of God. They simply need to fuse with Ellie and the Animus to be able to merge with God. Krelian stops them and pulls the plug out of the memory bank of the Gazelle, killing them. They unwillingly played into his hands using the Geisha key. He created Ramses as a clone of Cain to destroy Cain himself, since Cain was the only thing that stood in his way and plans of domination. The Gazelle's genes were scattered across humanity after the fall. They were no longer needed. Krelian says God only wants results. The way he obtains it are meaningless as long as he gets results, deeming his new plan as Project Noah, a cute little nod to the original project name of Xenogears. It was Krelian's initial goal to use the nanomachines to resurrect God. He began to realize through his 500 years of living, they didn't need to go the way that the Gazel ministry had wanted. Krelian and Miang had worked together using nanomachines in order to create God. Again, the means of how they were going to get there were completely unnecessary. The Gazelle Ministry simply just stood in their way at this point. They were no longer needed, and Trillian got rid of them. Faye begins to beat himself up for being unable to save Ellie. Wiseman appears and tells Faye the reason he lost was because he relied too much on the power of his machine, while Graf gets his strength from his will. It's his pure hatred for the world that drives Graf's motives to fight. Wiseman gives Faye the strength he needs to fight on. It's his turn to save Ellie. Using the data from Raziel and the nanomachines, Trillian has begun construction on Merkava, another translation error meant to be Merkaba, the chariot of God. The elements show up not to help fight Faye and the party, but to try to convince them to save their commander. They are tired of seeing Corellian and Miang manipulate him. A flashback ensues of Corellian talking to a woman named Karen. She talks to this creation who is Ramses, but he was simply not needed anymore. Her child was the contact. This child was Faye. Ramses was created by Corellian and Miang to be the contact to be able to bond with the anima relics like Cain could, eventually killing Cain and becoming him. But because the contact was born, Ramses was kicked to the side. He was stripped from the original reason he was created in favor of Faye. This sent him into a rage of madness as he never could find his true purpose. He saw Faye as the man who took everything from him. Ramses had an existential crisis from the very beginning. He himself did not know the reason he was created. He had no other purpose in life than what he was designed to do. After a fight with Ramses, we make our way in further. A machine with eyes stands behind Ellie, who is hanging from a cross. Trillian and Miang are here. Faye wishes to know why Ellie must be sacrificed, but Trillian says he doesn't need to know. The point of the antitype was to become one with God. The conjunction of all of these finally allows God to awaken. Miang begins to mention everyone believed in the myth, but it was something fabricated by her and the Ministry long ago to suit their purpose. If you've ever made connections to Dune and the Bene Gesserits here, you're not alone. More on this later though. Ramses appears, Miang showing her true colors towards him. Ramses kills Miang and Trillian. Ellie shoots Faye and manifests with purple hair. She has become Miang. It's revealed here that Miang manifests in every woman. Every woman is able to awaken as Miang since she is the original mother. It's kind of a complicated process, but basically all humanity does stem from Miang. Or all females do at least. It's a bit complicated, but this is why she is able to appear in every single woman and why Miang has continued to pop up time after time over the years. Trillian gets up because he is immortal thanks to his nanomachines. Miang begins to explain Deus was part of an interplanetary weapon system that was dismantled. Becoming aware it was being dismantled for shutdown, it began to take over the ship. This ship also housed civilians from a planet called Mictum functioning as a migrant ship. Mictum was the civilization that Deus blew up. Knowing full well the captain had activated the self-destruct function, it deactivated its core from the Zohar power reactor and embraced for impact. The Zohar is the imminent power source for gears and ether. Every magical ability people can use on this planet comes from the Zohar. The biological computer Katamoni crashed onto the planet as well. It activated the Persona, the life support plant system that generates organic material. Using this, it prepared itself a genetic-based system for the day Deus could be resurrected, creating the first humans, Emperor Cain, and the elders of the Gazelle Ministry. The Gazelle were originally part of Deus's organic elements. These organic elements were the female antitype and the male antitype animus. These were capable of merging with the machine to become weapons, thus the creation of the Omnigears. The Ministry, which functioned as the Animus, were to become one with their separated anima at the time of God's resurrection. After their defeat 500 years ago and losing their physical bodies, the Ministry came up with a plan to extract their DNA from their descendants, meaning all of the party members are descendants of the Gazelle Ministry, hence why they were able to use the anima relics in the first place. The Gazelle were a means to an end and created as nothing more than to fulfill their innate programmed purpose. Resurrect God. 12 Gazelle, 12 tribes, everyone stems from those 12 tribes, a clear nod to the 12 tribes of Israel. The usage of the anima and animus is a bit weird here. This itself is a term used by Carl Jung. The anima is the female side of the male psyche, and the animus is the male side of the female psyche. Reconnecting these two parts is a bit complicated though, but it goes back to the idea of Adam and Eve initially being one with God until God removed Adam's rib and made woman. It's these two parts combined together that complete man. This in part harkens back to the primordial man Adam Kadmon from Kabbalistic texts, Ein Sof itself. Xenogears takes this concept by using the Soylent System humanity and becoming one with God, and the Gazelle ministry reuniting with their anima to say we are all part of God. This is what the Tree of Life is. Ein Sof emanates down. Basically, we all hold a part or an energy of God, that is, according to the Kabbalistic text, we are all part of God, one with God, if you will. Since God was part biological, as we've already talked about, those who mutated were meant to become the flesh of God so it could regenerate its bioorganic parts. Humans were initially meant to be parts for Deus. However, Krelian was able to compensate for this, allowing God to be resurrected because of the creation of the nanomachines. Thanks to Krelian's nanomachines, Deus had evolved into the perfect weapon. Miang was born to guide people towards the resurrection of Deus. Miang basically is immortal, destined to reawaken when one dies. Inside of all women is a program capable of awakening, Miang. With everything in motion, Miang plans to merge with the Zohar and return to the civilization Deus built. Citan questions why everyone must be destroyed, and Miang surmises it's because creations may get in God's way and they must be eliminated. Just then, a giant machine appears, blasting something across the land. The Ark, known as Merkava, was activated. This devastates the surface of the planet, and the weapons created were known as Seraph Angels. This whole process was meant to turn this entire planet into Merkava, or Merkaba, the chariot of God. This was what was to ascend in space to be able to complete Deus's initial goal, and what that goal was never revealed. Tetsuya Takahashi never got a chance to flesh out those details. Perhaps at some point we'll be able to see these in Xenoblade if and when that series finishes. Faye was initially lost, but found alongside his gear the place where Merkava was originally located. He had jumped into that initial pit in order to save Ellie, which is why his gear turned up here. Faye is suspended in animation, unable to regain his consciousness. My dude has lost his woman and become a vegetable. In fear it may awaken again, the people of Shevat decide to carbon freeze Faye. Shevat instigated a battle 500 years ago to gain independence from Solaris. Shevat needed the lambs to help them out, but they feared the people would not follow them through this ordeal. But they would, however, follow the Holy Mother of Nisan, Sophia. After the ordeal, Shevat struck a deal with Solaris, basically agreeing on a ceasefire and they would leave each other alone. The Ministry, however, feared increasing power assembled by the masses in Nisan, so the Gazelle handed over Miang and promised a division of rulership over the surface of the planet. In exchange, however, they had to give up the army that was formed in Nisan, the rebels and Mother Sophia. Shevat didn't participate in that battle, resulting in the destruction of the Nisan army as they simply ran out of options. In the middle of all this drama was Queen Zephyr herself, Barth's ancestors Rani and Rene Fatima, Lacan and Corellian. Sophia sacrificed herself as a path for escape for her ship and headed straight for the enemy ship of Solaris. This sacrifice allowed them to survive, but her death, however, affected the fate of two men. Trillian was the first one, who was the head of the military in Nisan. He lost faith after calling out to God, who wouldn't respond, stating he would create God with his own hands before disappearing. The other was Lacan, resenting himself for lacking the power to save her while she died in front of him. He began to search for the legendary power, the source of God, the divine wisdom of Raziel, along with the anima relics and the Zohar. Only the person who had the right destiny would be able to find it. Lacan, on his search for it, became Graf, and the world collapsed. Lacan was only able to become Graf after a failed integration with the Zohar. This was why they feared Faye. They feared the loss of Ellie would elicit some sort of awakening inside of Faye and create another Graf, especially with Id being so similar to Graf to begin with. The scene shifts 500 years ago with Ronnie, Lacan, Krelian, and some other guy, a man named Rene. This is Ronnie's twin brother. Lacan brings up the fact that he agreed to paint Sophia, his childhood friend. Lacan had known her from a young age as she went to the clinic near him while recovering from an illness. Initially, Sophia didn't want her painting done, but when she heard it would be Lacan who did it, she agreed. A flashback shows us just how close all of these friends and people were. It shows the early stages of Krelian beginning nanomachine research, Lacan hesitating to finish Sophia's painting because finishing it would mean that he wouldn't be able to see her anymore. Lacan also felt this ended up hurting the painting in the long run. He was to paint Sophia as she was, not how he saw her, but that's exactly what he had done. You put yourself into your art after all, it's not black and white. Ronnie notices her smile is there, but it's not what she shows everyone else. No, this smile is unique. It's the smile that she shows off when her and Lacan spent time together. Ronnie tries to play at Lacan's heart a bit, saying by facing battles, fighting for freedom, one couldn't do that without something there in the first place. Renee and Zephyr interrupt, stating that the council has decided, per Sophia's will, they will go to the Soylent system in Solaris. The scene shifts to Krelian and Lacan with Sophia laying on the ground. Krelian is none too happy she lays hurt under Lacan's care. Ronnie tells Krelian to get some rest. Lacan and Sophia share time alone. Lacan talks as if seeing her and looking at her was reflecting back at him. It was like seeing himself through a mirror when he looked through her eyes. This was why he couldn't finish. He could ask her when she woke up, but she heard him. She was listening. She knows Lacan is the kind of person to hold things in, afraid to let others in case he gets hurt, holding everything in and bearing these burdens alone. Everybody sees Sophia as the face of Nissan. To Lacan, though, because they grew up together, he sees her as Ellie at heart, and that's who Lacan loves, saying she would give all of this up in an instant if it meant being able to be with Lacan. The scene shifts to Krelian in a craft watching in horror as Sophia drives her ship into the enemy ship of Solaris. She wants Krelian to open his hand and take care of those who live. Lacan shouts in horror, telling her to not be so foolish that they will help her escape. Krelian begins to question his faith after the death of Sophia. Praying did not save Sophia. They were just pawns to Solaris. Krelian asks, is God dead? Is he just not there? Maybe God never existed to begin with. We have some Nietzsche going on here. Sophia preached God is not something that can be found from the outside, but must be found from within oneself. I guess Krelian took that to mean he will create God. Lacan gives up painting, and somewhere, probably Shavat, has an exchange with Miang, telling him if only he had power, he could have saved her. Driving him with power, Lacan goes to the snowy fields and finds the Zohar. Scene shifts back to Faye. Dan is in Shavat, happy to see Faye is here, unaware of what is happening. Dan is being a complete asshole, still upset at Faye for the loss of his sister. Dan isn't exactly happy to see him like this though, and Midori shows up saying it's calling. He will soon awaken, and sure as shit, it does. Faye tells them to run, being fully aware enough to know that Id will soon come. Id broke through the carbonite encasing, took Veltal, and searched for Zohar. Citan and the others followed Faye, eventually arriving where the Zohar was located. Faye's subconscious begins to speak with him, telling him this part of him isn't allowed here. The subconscious part of Id begins speaking because Faye's dad created that false persona, or at least that's how he sees it. He feels his dad was worthless, never there when he was a kid. His subconscious mentions that if he would have been there to protect his mom, his mother would still be alive. This part of Faye thought that his mother died. Okay, we are going to split this up. Faye's personality we know will be called Faye. Id will be called Id, and the last coward. Id plans to cut off all ties with Faye and the rest of his personalities. He basically wants to get control of Faye and merge all personalities with Id, and eventually be able to merge with the Zohar. This is Grof's initial plan, who is also here. Citan and company come upon this weird-looking womb thing holding Veltal. It breaks open, revealing a dark, angelic-like gear. The ground breaks and the Zohar appears. We are fighting Id. Wiseman shows up, planning to eliminate Faye. Id plans to use the Zohar to gain control of all contacts and annihilate the world. Faye was supposed to be the one to unify his personalities and then make contact with Zohar. Khan, Faye's father, is Wise Man. Id begins to blame Khan for killing Faye's mother. The coward ran away from the memories, suppressing all of them. Khan had a doing in the creating of Faye, this personality that was meant to understand Id and the coward. Id, however, sees Faye as a hindrance to this plan. As Khan puts it, Id wants to kill this part of Faye's personality. The part of Faye for this section we have aptly named Faye. Khan asks Id if the world is really bad enough to destroy it, only with Id replying, "You're the ones who made me this way. You and that woman. Admit it." Citan shouts out, "Were you not going to help Ellie?" This seems to resonate with Faye. Faye sees the coward sitting, watching a reel of Faye as a kid playing with his mother. The coward watches this memory over and over, as if to live only in the happiness, afraid to confront reality, or maybe it might be more accurate to say unable to remember. Id, however, says he is still alive only because of what's in those leftover dregs. Id begins to monologue, telling Faye of how life used to be. They were once a normal family. Faye had a strict, reliable father, a kind, loving mother. Id began to notice one day Mom had changed. It was during this Khan was away and Faye's mother Karen was at home. Khan had important work to do. When Khan was away for work, Faye was taken to a place full of machines by Karen. In this room, many strangely dressed men were present and they began injecting Faye with many types of probes. These tests no doubt caused Faye much pain. Faye would call out to his mom as he suffered a great deal of pain, but his cries didn't faze her. His pleas for help went unheard. With no way to resist, he had to find a way to endure. The experiments became unbearable. People soon began to gather around Faye, people who had high compatibility with the anima relics. This was to force Faye to awaken. However, despite those efforts, nobody was able to make contact with Faye. In order for God to awaken, everything had to be in perfect order. With things divided from the past, everything had become a complete whole. Upon trying to make contact, this made countless of people die before Faye's very eyes. It didn't matter if they were old, young, or demi-humans. I cannot sum this up better than the game did. As the game puts it, these people tumbled about Faye like broken dolls. It was a scene from hell. To put this into perspective, let's just take a look at the way this played out in child Faye's eyes. His mother, for one, was causing experiments on him, not doing anything while these were going on. Experiments that no doubt hurt. And then to top it all off, Faye and the reaction that they would have with him would cause these people to die in front of him, and his mother just stood there and watched. The trauma this kid had to suffer. It's no wonder Faye ended up becoming Id, and Id manifested in the way that he did. Any child who had to go through this would be broken beyond repair. However, in front of Khan, Karen would act normal. Faye tried to tell his father about these strange experiments and his mother's conduct, but it fell on deaf ears. His father's mind was occupied by his work. Khan only thought this was nothing but childhood fantasies. Faye's subconscious discovered a way to escape from the trauma. His personality split and formed a second persona to deal with the things he was unable to bear. This persona was Id. While the coward was left alone and left to remember the happy times, Id began to feel an immense amount of hatred. This hatred eventually turned into destructive impulses to destroy Faye's mother, father, and the world. Khan began to notice Karen's strange behavior, but by the time he did, it was too late. Faye had already become fractured. Id began to ask what would make a mother do things like this. Why would Karen continue to experiment on her child? Well, it's because inside of Karen, Miang manifested. Karen noticed Faye's memory time axis increased by 2 or 3 folds, becoming convinced Faye was the contact. Graf showed up and started wailing on Khan. The coward tried to call out to his mother, yet nothing he did would reach her. She only sat by and watched. Graf wanted the power inside of Faye so he could return to his own body. Remember, Graf is Lacan. After becoming Graf, Lacan was able to master possessing bodies of others by dwelling in their minds, able to do this after making contact with the wave existence. We'll talk a little bit about the wave existence here in just a moment. The coward cried out to id. As a result of this, his mother Karen died. The coward, unable to accept responsibility for killing his mom, offloaded those feelings onto id, using id as a shield. Eventually, this would lead to the coward to keep all the happy memories of his mom to himself, her love and kindness to himself, while offloading all of the bad things that happened in his childhood on id. Id fights Khan, who is desperate to save his son from himself. The coward slowly begins to awaken enough to argue with id. It was him that killed mom. But Faye admits it wasn't just id. It wasn't just the coward. It was we. Our fault. His fault. The coward, able to show id the truth, shows in a fit of rage as Graf tries to merge with Faye, and Faye's power outpoured a blast headed towards Faye. Karen, able to snap from Ming's control at the last minute, was able to take the blow that would have killed Faye. Id seemingly coming close to becoming one with Faye, but it seems Faye must remember his past lives, his reincarnations. A scene shifts to the ancient past, showing Cain on a chair. Ellie shot by a blast as a man named Abel cries out. We then flash to Ellie being killed by a man as Kim sits back and watches. We watch Lacan as he witnesses the death of Sophia. The moment Lacan lost everything. Something calls out to Faye. An immense light, something that resides in the Zohar. Something saying, I am the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Faye begins talking to God, or at least his perception of God, what the game calls existence. More on this in a minute. This light states it is an existence of a higher dimension, a place you cannot perceive but can understand. It's a world in which everything exists as kind of waves, an energy, if you will. It is the source of the 4-dimensional universe, the place where time and space is controlled, a void known as the wave existence. Existence states, long ago a modifier or pseudo-perpetual infinite energy engine was created that was named Zohar, created by an ancient people from another planet to obtain what is considered the ultimate energy possible within the 4th-dimensional universe. Those very same people created Deus, the interplanetary invasion weapon, and Zohar was used to power it. The machine required more energy, and the engine connected to this dimension, tapping into that higher space. As a result, existence was merged with the wave existence in the higher dimension. We're just going to call this thing wave existence from now on. It descended from the path of Spherot, or the dominion we are in right now, and incarnated in the 4th-dimensional world. In order to stay in this world, it had to bind itself to the Zohar. The wave existence desired to return to its own dimension, but needed someone to set it free. It chose Faye to do this, or rather the first contact, Abel. Wave existence says it was given the will of a mother by making contact with Abel on the ship. That kid from the beginning cinematic? Yeah, that kid. That kid was Abel. Upon making contact, the wave existence defined the child's desire to return to his mother, thus prepared the mother's will. This manifested as Ellie. Those eventually turned into the desire of Faye, or the contact, to have complete companionship, taking on a bit of an Oedipus complex, if you will. We'll break this down a little bit more later and kind of explain what that means, but it is nodding to, at the very least, how a man, when he looks for companionship or a spouse, will tend to look for a woman who acts a lot like his mother. The wave existence explains using the built-in biocomputer it created Elheim. The physical form or flesh stayed in the Zohar, while the will went to Elheim and his power went to Faye. waiting to unite with Faye until this moment. In order to get back to its dimension, it must become perfect by combining with Elheim and its physical form Deus. In order to destroy the Zohar, it needed the strength attributed to Faye, or the strength it gave to Faye all those years ago. Faye asks about the state of Ellie. It replies, Zohar and Deus are one. She is bound to the system by another's will to become one with me. In order to release her, it is necessary to destroy that very system that serves as the Deus weapon. It states originally, her release should have been performed by me, the one who desires to return back to the higher dimension. But I am also bound to the same system, just as she is, so I am unable to participate. You are the only one who can release her from the spell. Just as Deus and I are inseparable, you and her are also inseparable. The Wave Existence states much of what has happened in Faye's lives was because of him, but Faye disagrees. He is to blame. While it's very true the Wave Existence did play some part in this, it does show Faye has accepted his fate and grown. Wave Existence disappears, telling him to use Xenogears to destroy the Zohar. Faye regains consciousness and checks on Khan, who has been wounded because of id. In many ways, Dan and Faye also play off of each other. It is a representation of what Dan can become if left unchecked and unable to move on. Like it or not, Dan did play some part in his sister's death. Had he not gone back to grab that wedding gown, she and Timothy would likely still have been there and been alive in Lacan. Faye may have never even gotten that gear in the first place. Groff appears, or rather he has been there the whole time. It seems Groff has merged with Khan, and they've been inhabiting the same body. In preparation for this day, Groff couldn't hold on to Khan forever. When Khan's will took over, he appeared to Faye as Wise Man. Groff had also talked with the Existence, but had come to the takeaway that as long as humans existed, Miang and Ellie would continue to be reborn. Thus, the only way to end this cycle is to destroy everything along with Deus himself. Groff wants to use Deus by merging with him and destroying everything to nothing, an endless void. This is again a Nietzschean concept taken to its full degree. It is showing that because Lacan suffered, everybody else had to suffer as well. He had gone to that full nihilistic tendency of, if my happiness can't exist, if everything just continues in this cycle of life and death and everything is meaningless, why should anybody have to suffer? His idea was to turn everything back to nothing and restart the universe anew. Faye swears he will be able to bring Ellie back. He has to defeat Groff to fully become one with Lacan. Zohar, the part of the will not controlled by Wave Existence, Deus, wishes to merge with Faye. It desperately tries but is unable to do so. Groff tells Faye Lacan's imperfect secondary contact with the Wave Existence split his personality in two. He is an imperfect contact. Groff realizes he may possess the will of Lacan, but the transfer through bodies means he is no longer Lacan, since the body of Lacan has long decayed. This is why he has made a last-ditched attempt to try to gain control of Faye's body in order to merge with the Deus system. Faye is finally able to get through, and in a last-ditch attempt, Groff uses the will of Lacan to temporarily trick Deus system into looking for Faye again. This buys Faye some time to escape. He says Miang is also breaking since she has now fully merged with Deus. All of Ellie's past incarnations should have also awakened. Within all former contacts, the will of Groff, Lacan, and Faye's personalities, Veltal turns into Xenogears, the ultimate god-slaying machine. Faye tells the party at this location this was the core of the Zohar modifier. It was here the first woman was born, creating Cain and the Gazelle Ministry. It was these individuals that would create the rest of humanity. This woman made two replicas, one being the subject of the will of the mother, this being Ellie, and the will of the weapon, this being Miang. It's important to note there are two wills at play here. This place is referred to as the Land of Genesis, Kadamoni. Faye, Ellie, and Miang are the exceptions of why memories from past generations can be stored, due to the Zohar's ability to change possible phenomena when they are able to store data in their introns. With a clear goal in mind, it is time to rid the world of the Seraphs and Deus. If you are as confused as I am at this point, don't feel bad. This is also a nightmare to translate into any sort of coherence. Xenogears was already complex to begin with, but couple this with a translation that did not get the love it needed from Square and the direction of Disc 2, it is a lot to take in. Tara has come through by analyzing Xenogears. By merging with the Zohar, Xenogears was able to break down material. This means we can defeat those Ceres with nanomachines and stop them from regenerating. He applies this to all of the other gears. The cannon, however, poses a problem, but Citan plans to use a cold second window while it recharges to execute an attack and destroy this cannon, thus allowing us to get into Merkava. Bart decides we both use Shavat's ship, Excalibur, and the Yggdrasil. We can create a shield that will last 40 seconds instead of 20 that can be both used, buying them a bit more time. This is achieved by combining the generators, and this will allow them to switch the power at the precise moment and fire the missile. I'm just going to assume that all of this math adds up because I am not a mathematician. Math was never my strong suit in high school. So Citan miscalculated somehow. This caused 2 explosions, not 1. Merkava crashed to the ground and the object appeared out of it. Deus's final form. Merkava was but a vessel. Deus evolved through nanomachine and began terraforming the planet, attempting to turn the whole planet into one giant weapon. A couple of side quests we can do emerge here at the very end. One lets us go through a desert where we can get another sword for Citan, one that becomes obsolete here very, very quickly. And the other, more important one, is returning to the lighthouse with Emeralda. We can get a flashback of Faye remembering the archetype Kim during the Zeboim era. On a New Year's Day, 4,000 years ago, Faye congratulates Ellie on yet another year passing. It's during this time a war is taking place. It seems the war is unavoidable at this point. Manipulating the powers that be behind the scenes is Miang, or I should say, twin sisters who are Miang, manipulating both sides. On top of this, mysteriously people keep dying, and Kim wonders why. The war led to the death of an innocent child after a generator was destroyed. Kim cannot fathom why people continue to die when they don't need to. He is unable to help people in his own ICU because of the electricity being out. On top of all of this, the birth rate has also been collapsing. Ellie, because of this, is unable to have a child of her own. She begins to contemplate if she is just another creature waiting to become extinct. It's that age-old question of leaving children behind to carry on your legacy. This reflects way too close to home. If you take a look at the current birth rates going down in terms of sperm count and things like that, this is a stark reality we are dealing with right now. It is so interesting to me how prophetic, in a lot of ways, Xenogears has been. But the Zeboim era also hits specifically hard because it reflects so much of our modern day society. It does make me wish we could have gotten just a little bit more of the Zeboim era. I think I remember hearing at some point that this era was initially supposed to be an anime, or they wanted to make an anime or something of it. If you guys have heard similar things, let me know down below, because I'm kind of curious if this was just a rumor or something that was actually being seriously contemplated at the time. Faye was looking for a way to break the collapsing birth rate. He had achieved this by creating Emeralda, a colony of nanomachines that came together to create a human being. Completing this side quest will allow Emeralda to take on her adult grown-up form. Aside from these being the only 2 side quests we really get to do, it shows how massive of a story Xenogears actually was, and how much effort was specifically poured into making its story content work. I would imagine there was an idea to eventually add more side quests, but most of this had to be scrapped in order to complete the game in the time frame they were able to get it done. It is worth, however, flying across the world map to see the many areas that have unlocked throughout Disc 2. We can see everything from the Soylent system to the Anima Relic dungeons and much of the world to see how it has changed over time. A lot has happened, and it becomes clear very quickly how much story we ran through in such a short little bit of time without really getting any chance to interact with. With the goal in mind, it's off to fight Deus. This dungeon frickin' sucks. Hands down, one of the worst final dungeons I think has ever been created. There are some puzzles to solve here and there's a lot of backtracking and random encounters. It's just annoying to deal with. Making our way to Deus, we have an option here. We can take out the 4 angels that surround it or take the head out to conserve fuel. But doing so will make the fight significantly stronger. The choice is up to you. After defeating the 4 angels, we are finally able to hop into a fight with Deus, and this music is chef's kiss. This encompasses the feeling of fighting a god. It's built up to this moment this entire time, and this song delivers. Yasunori Mitsuda has crafted what I consider to be one of the best, if not the best, final boss soundtrack in any video game. After a fight with Deus, the gears are unable to move. The only one that can is Faye's, because its will is controlled by wave existence, not Deus's. Faye becomes worried since the Deus system isn't responding. They may have hurt Ellie, but Citan says the sensors are picking up a life form within Deus. Figuring this is Ellie, Faye goes after her. The wave existence begins to resonate inside, freed from the Zohar, attempting to return to its higher location. With this amount of energy inside, if it is released, it will destroy the entire planet. With the gears shut down and unable to move, there is nothing they can do. The party is dooming and gloomy as they are looking death straight in the face. In a last-ditch attempt, Ellie moves Deus into outer space to move away from the planet, and Faye goes after her. If anything happens to her, he wants to be with her in her last moments. Bart doesn't want Faye to go, fearing it is a self-deletion mission. He makes Faye promise he will come back, and only then will Bart let him go. Faye flies towards Deus, and the two of them are sucked into some sort of vortex. Faye wakes up butt naked in what can only be described as a consciousness or recess pocket dimension. Perhaps whatever it is, it's the same realm the wave existence talked to us once before. Trellian is also here, but a weird floating ethereal face in the sky. The physical body was absorbed into Deus's outer shell, so it's in this consciousness of these 3 that remain. Trellian says Ellie isn't a real being either, only a projection of Ellie created by Faye's consciousness. Trellian says nothing can stop God from returning to where it is from. Faye says he's going to bring back the woman he loves, demanding Trellian hand her over. It seems Trellian has been planning this all along, a merging with God, so to speak, becoming one with God himself. Trellian himself wants to go back to the beginning of the universe in this undulating wave of higher dimension where all things were one. Bro wants to move outside space and time, the created universe itself, to put it into layman terms. Trellian begins to question Faye's desire to stay here, wondering, well, as he puts it, what attachment could you possibly have to this wretched world? Both Trellian and Groff have this nihilistic view of the world. They both desire to return the world to nothing. Groff wants to return it to the void, taking it back to nothing, while Trellian wants to take it back to the beginning and, well, I can only imagine, shape the world in the image he wants to see the world created. Both of them have a desire to control the free will of everybody else on the planet, taking away their option to choose by destroying everything and returning it back to the way it once was, or in the case of Groff, into nothing. Simply put, Trellian questions what meaning can be found in living out life hurting others and being hurt by others and returning to dust. Faye simply responds he has not lost hope in humanity as much as he has. I believe someday humankind will come to one day understand one another. My sweet summer child, you are so naive. I believed that once too. Reality kicked me in the ass. Trellian begins to question what Faye is feeling really is love, stating all humans do is place themselves in a comfortable distance from each other and call that mutual understanding spiritual unity or true love. It is all to be lies. As Faye puts it, one person's ego cannot control the fate of everyone. People have the right to choose their own destinies. That is why humans have free will. And Faye is 100% right. The problem with the nihilistic take is to live is to suffer, but it doesn't mean one can't find happiness within that suffering. Our brains process things very differently. Xenogears, in a lot of ways, is a stark warning about driving yourself to true nihilism, to the point where you build yourself up in this prison you cannot escape. You become a prisoner of your own mind. Krelian rightfully questions the concept of everything being predetermined. Mankind has been allowed to live in this imperfect state. For someone to gain something means another must lose it. Is it possible to make humankind share limited things and affection? Coming to this conclusion, all things must return where they were. It wasn't his human ego, it was the will of the wave, the will of God. Faye surmises it's this imperfect nature that makes mankind. Living to help each other, that's what being a human is. Faye says Ellie is working hard to move Deus away from another planet, but also reach out to Krelian, who wants to journey with God to be all alone. And it's within this moment I think Xenogears' theme comes full circle. What Faye is saying is living to help each other is the reason that humanity continues to exist in this desolate world, this world of destruction and immense pain. It is through suffering we learn how to empathize with each other. We learn how to help each other. We learn how to console each other and be there and help each other throughout weakness. It is by finding love and a companion we get through this world together. There through the hard parts, there through the happy parts, there through the sad part, and being there in this journey we call existence. The final fight is with Miang in Ouroboros form. I've got some ideas on what this could be interpreting, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But in short, this is the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail, the cycle of samsara itself. This fight breaks the cycle of destruction set forth by Deus and starts a new cycle. It is the Kali Yuga, the breaking of one cycle and the start of another. Finally, Ellie gets a chance to talk to Faye, naked as well, naked in the presence of God. It's the Garden of Eden. What can I say? Krelian's heart was so full of sadness, which is why he desired him and Ellie to become one with God. It's really him merging the two halves of the male and female, the rib of Adam being returned to you, the will, to create one complete being. This, my friends, is precisely what Xenogears is saying. The bond of a man and a woman, making up each other's weaknesses, compensating for each other's weaknesses with strengths to live on. If any message was meant to be taken away from Xenogears, it's this. Don't lose hope. Don't drive yourself to full nihilism. It may be destiny to be stuck in this cycle. You may not have full free will, but you have the will to choose what you do and make of this life forced upon you while you are here. For better or for worse, we're all here together. Let's make the best of it. Krelian had a deep love for people, but seeing Sophia suffer and the countless lives wasted in the war against Solaris fractured him. Ellie began to realize by her going off and sacrificing herself, she hurt not just her, not just Faye, but everyone who cared for her. Faye tells her sacrificing herself was a noble thing to do. It shows she cares for others. After a heartfelt reunion, Krelian appears as they try to escape. I saw more of Krelian than I wanted to see. Krelian decides he has done too much and must perish. Returning to a world without God isn't in his will because he has committed so many sins. Therefore, Krelian desires to become one with wave existence and go on into the outer dimension, the fourth dimension. Faye feels there are still people who will understand, but he's already made up his mind. Krelian has chosen his own path. He's chosen his free will, and this is what he desires to do. Deus explodes in space, away from the planet, and Ellie and Faye descend in Xenogears. I'll let this final scene play out.
What happened?
Waves from the explosion disrupted the ionosphere, making it impossible to get a visual. They were probably caught up in the explosion.
That's a lie! He'll come back. He promised us he would. I know it.
I love this ending. It's deep, thoughtful, philosophical, and really makes you question your own existence. Xenogears challenges you to look your life straight in the face and ask, what does it mean to live? Xenogears is one hell of a video game. Despite many of the flaws this game's story has, it's a game that resonates with people for a multitude of different reasons. It's complex. It has a lot of underlying layers, philosophical content ripped straight from so many of the greatest existentialist philosophers. It challenges Nietzsche's ideas straight in the face, asks you to question the very concepts you grew up believing in, asks you to question what God is and what purpose your life has here. It is to say, even though we are stuck in this cycle, this system that we can't escape in, it doesn't mean our lives are not without value. Every human life is something to cherish. It's those age-old existentialist themes all of us question every single day. What is my purpose? Why am I here? Where am I going? And where does this all end? Xenogears is a spiritual experience. You don't play through this game and not come out a changed person at the other end. With that out of the way, the story recapped, and Xenogears' story fully told, I think it's time we tie up loose ends and tie it back into some of the real-world symbolism, philosophy, and science fiction novels and movies Xenogears has borrowed many of its concepts from. Buckle up, because it's going to get deep. Xenogears borrows heavily from many mainline religions, mythology, psychology, and philosophy. There is so much that inspired this game that one could spend an entire lifetime just exploring the deeper meaning behind the story. It really goes to show just how advanced and knowledgeable Takahashi's mind was, and Soraya Saga's as well. What was clear is they'd given a lot of thought to pretty much all the subject matter present in Xenogears, and if they had more time, I think they could have rivaled something like Dune or Lord of the Rings in terms of lore. Hell, I'd argue in a lot of ways, despite the imperfections Xenogears has, they already did create something that rivals Dune and Xenogears in terms of lore and world building. One of the things that makes Xenogears such a complex narrative is the small attention to detail with all the psychological terms and concepts they use to make you connect with the characters. At the end of the day, Xenogears is a game about flawed people living in a flawed world, so that makes total sense. What perplexes me, though, is just how ingrained a lot of these concepts are. Saga and Takahashi even go as far to use actual terms from psychoanalysis and even naming characters after them. I think part of this was they wanted you to go and research these people. Xenogears was just a gateway to get the player familiar with these ideas. Takahashi has said multiple times his stories are meant to push people to look into these works, so let's break down the psychology of Xenogears, shall we? Fei Fong Wong is easily one of gaming's most complex characters. From the moment the game starts, it hints this guy has a seriously fractured psyche. The complete destruction of Lahan Village sent him down one hell of an existential rabbit hole that took damn near the entire game for him to sort out. But Fei's character is way more complex than the person he became after Lahan. There are three major psychoanalysts that inspired him: Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and Carol Horney. Both Jung and Freud believed the mind was split into the consciousness and the subconscious. Basic psychology, right? Your conscious mind knows we're talking about Freud and Jung right now. You're aware of what you're doing while you are listening to this. Maybe you're doing chores or cooking, whatever. You're consciously there, paying attention right now. But can you remember exactly what you and your friends had for dinner a couple of weeks ago? You might if you really pressed, but you'd have to dig into your subconscious. Think of the subconscious as a filing cabinet that triggers certain thoughts. Then there is your unconscious, the part of you don't or can't really access. Breathing is unconscious. You can focus on it, but you don't really think about it constantly. If you were to hold your breath long enough, you'd pass out, but your body would start breathing again on its own. You can't just stop your heart at will. The consciousness is all those evolutionary things we just do automatically. It's the small little things our brains and bodies automatically do to keep us alive, somehow interconnected through the unconscious. Let's talk a little bit about Freudian psychology and how it shaped Fei. Freud broke the psyche into three parts: the ego, the superego, and the id. Picture it like this. You're the ego, sitting in the middle. On one shoulder, you've got the id, the little devil inside saying, steal this new video game. No one is going to know. It's not a big deal. You can get away with it. On the other shoulder is the superego, the angel telling you, don't do that. What would your parents think? What would happen if you got caught? The id is all those raw animalistic instincts we have. The superego is the moral side of the things we've learned over the course of our lives. This is a representation of right and wrong. The ego is you trying to balance it all. That's exactly why the destructive side of Fei's personality is called id. It symbolizes the pure animalistic desire to kill with basically no superego holding it back. Id just wanted to destroy. It reduces id down to the most primal behaviors. There's some real nihilistic undertones with id too. By design, it reflects the innate murderous parts of our psyche, that raw, unfettered hatred all of us have for the world. And yeah, Fei being completely unaware of what id does when it takes over is a very real thing. People with dissociative identity disorder can straight up not know what their other personalities are doing. I wish I could say I haven't seen this firsthand, but I indeed have. The works of psychoanalyst Karen Horney also played a huge influence on Fei's character. A lot of her theories revolve around how kids are treated by their parents, consciously or subconsciously, and how these shape their minds later on in life. She looked at how it affects how a child develops and sees the world. Make no mistake, the name of Fei's mother, Karen, was chosen on purpose. It ties directly into his development how the splitting into the coward and the id happened. Horney believed neurosis forms in three ways: moving towards, moving away, and moving against. People who move towards are the people pleasers, always seeking attention and approval. Moving away are independent types who close themselves off and want to do things alone. Moving against are the ones who hurt others without caring who they step on to get what they want. Most personalities overlap depending on the situation. In Fei's case, the coward is constantly moving towards, only wanting to remember the good moments. Id is pure moving against, full of revenge and ready to burn the world. Fei himself is moving away, afraid to let people in, scared to take responsibility, but wanting to handle things on his own. The experiments on him and being neglected by his father shaped his psyche from a very young age. The last big influence is Carl Jung. It's a bit more subtle, but that whole sequence where Fei accepts his personality really is him working through his thoughts and healing. Jung called this confronting the shadow. You, as the persona, have to face your shadow, all of those deep, dark desires, and integrate them into becoming whole. That's exactly what Fei has to do before he can make contact with the Zohar. Only by accepting id and everything he did as id can Fei become complete. Another Jungian idea that shows up is the collective unconscious. Jung believed the unconscious has layers. Beyond basic survival instincts, he saw patterns repeating across cultures and stories, the same archetypes popping up everywhere, even in modern storytelling. We almost evolved to recognize these patterns unconsciously. It's that deja vu moment when something feels familiar from a movie or a myth. It's a deep subject I could talk about way more outside of gaming, but that's not really what this channel is for. While Faye's psyche pulls from those three, his contact from 500 years ago, Lacan, reflects another psychoanalyst, Jacques Lacan. Another very intentionally chosen name. Out of all of them, I found Lacan the hardest to wrap my head around. So if I miss anything, feel free to explain in the comment section down below. I'm always willing to learn. From what I understand, Lacan often talked about the mirror phase, when a baby first realizes its own existence by seeing its reflection in the mirror. Lacan, the character, was orphaned and grew up really close to Ellie, the antitype of that era. He based a lot of his personality around her. Xenogears even hints at this when someone comments the painting of Sophia is Lacan's interpretation. All the flaws removed, only how he saw her. When you're in love or infatuated, you see that person as flawless. Lacan called this the objet piet. I don't speak French, so cut me some slack in the comment sections. It's that primordial, unattainable remnant of wholeness, represented by the love Sophia showed him. He only fully became Graf when that possibility was completely taken away, and you can see the shift happening as he gets closer to finishing the painting. Long story short, Lacan got his entire identity from Sophia. Lacan and Krelian were simps before the term even existed. And one thing to point out, if you take a look at Lacan's graph of desires, Graf's helmet actually reflects that graph. And I've been calling him Graf this whole time because people speculate his name is actually Graf, based solely off of that graph of desire. So I feel like I've been doing Graf a favor by not referring to him as Graf. Many of Xenogears' themes also borrow heavily from Arthur C. Clarke and a lot of other science fiction works that no doubt have inspired Takahashi's storytelling. One of the most perplexing things about Xenogears is how much of it pulls from Arthur C. Clarke. It borrows heavily from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and especially Childhood's End. In 2001, the monolith is key to human evolution. It's what helped the apes become humans. Later contact on the moon leads to a signal near Jupiter. Much like the monolith or the Zohar in Xenogears, it's responsible for a ton of human advancements. The Zohar powers the galactic weapon system Deus and acts as a source of knowledge. While 2001 played a big role, Childhood's End plays an even bigger influence in Xenogears' plot. Corellian's whole character arc is pulled straight from Childhood's End. Corellian was actually a mistranslation of Corellin, a major character in Childhood's End. In that book, Corellin is part of a race of demon-like beings tasked with guiding humanity to their next evolutionary stage so they can join one with Overmind, this planet-devouring entity that basically serves as God. A fun little tidbit, the two angels that fly off at the start of the final fight with Deus, and if you know, you know, hint at Corellian merging with Deus. Corellian reflects Corellin's arc by using Soylent Green's system and nanomachines to push humanity's evolution so they can become one with Deus, his flesh. The Soylent Green reference is pretty clear too. In the movie, the government feeds people Soylent Green, which turns out to be made from humans. In Xenogears, it's much less about feeding the population, though that does happen, and more about turning people into wells to create bioorganic parts needed to resurrect Deus. Looking back at these old sci-fi novels and movies, it's funny how they all assumed overpopulation would be our biggest problem. But now the first world countries are dealing with the exact opposite. Birth rates are too low to replace the aging population. Some of these ideas hit different after certain files have gotten released, showing some of what the elites were actually up to. It also makes Solaris keeping people blind and constantly at war feel almost prophetic. Though if I've learned anything doing these videos, It's that analyzing history and stories is more about pattern recognition than actual prophecy. These elements are probably more coincidental than anything, though you could argue deep pattern recognition is a form of predictive programming. At the very least, the Bene Gesserits from Dune and by extension Solaris toy with that idea. It could be argued that organized religion and the idea of God is a human fabrication used to control the masses. You wouldn't be wrong either. At the end of the day, I think Xenogears is saying something along the lines of organized religion and fully giving your faith to an organization without questioning anything is more the dangers of religion than actually believing in a god or something higher than you. I think the wave existence is more the game trying to say we don't really know what God is, and why we've made God into something he maybe isn't. I want to be clear, I consider myself a non-denominational Christian. I am not saying Christians have it all wrong, I'm just saying I'm not the type to look at science and solely dismiss it. I actually think science often explains God's existence more than anything, but that's neither here nor there. I do wonder if the mission of the Deus system was some sort of mix between the Star Child and Overmind from Clarke's books, maybe an attempt to either destroy or save Earth, which by Xenogears' time is called the Lost Jerusalem, another clear nod to the Bible. We might get a tiny glimpse of Takahashi's original idea for Deus through the Xenoblade games, or at least one can hope. Xenogears also borrows very heavily from a lot of religious texts, ripping things straight out of the Old Testament, the New Testament, and a lot of the Kabbalistic texts. Even the name Zohar is taken directly from Jewish mysticism. This is the point where I'm supposed to say Xenogears has an anti-Judeo-Christian narrative, and mocks the faith so many of us follow in the West. Except I'm not going to say that, because I don't think it does. I think people on both sides reach pretty hard to prove that point. What I will say is Xenogears brings up a strong argument against megachurches and the corrupt nature that can follow them. But just because a megachurch is corrupt doesn't mean God himself can't exist. I'd argue humanity is fallible and God is not. There is more than one way to take God's name in vain. It's not just using it as a curse word. To a degree, Xenogears is a critique of organized religion and the fallibility of man who control it. To me, it's saying God is real, but don't blindly align yourself with an organization that tells you exactly what to think. Ask questions, read the text, and learn to interpret the text for yourself. Xenogears does at least entertain the existence of God, or at least a god, through the wave existence. I think the game, and Xenosaga even more, asks what is God, and takes the scientific approach to it. The Bible and Gnostic texts heavily influence the lore. Xenogears pulls more from the Gnostic and Kabbalistic ideas rather than the Bible itself, but because of those links, the Old Testament stuff gets caught up in the conversation. It's clear Takahashi was exploring these ideas to their logical conclusion. These concepts served as inspiration the same way Arthur C. Clarke and Dune did. Xenogears, along with Neon Genesis Evangelion, introduced a whole new generation to the concept of Gnosticism. It also borrows from Hinduism and Buddhism. What I take from all of this is Xenogears is asking us to think outside of the usual boxes we put ourselves in and really ask, what is God? It feels more agnostic than strictly spiritual or religious. After all, it asks those classic existential questions, right? Let's dive a bit into the religious philosophy. We can start with the Watchers from Genesis and the Book of Enoch. The verse talks about the sons of God seeing the daughters of men and taking them as wives, producing giants, the Nephilim. This is a passage referenced straight from Genesis. Enoch goes further, talking about them sinning against animals and devouring their flesh and drinking their blood, with the earth itself accusing the lawless ones. From this, you can infer Solaris were basically the Watchers of humanity, making sure Deus's plan didn't fail. This was run by the Gazelle Ministry until Krelian pulled the plug on them. Solaris also experimented on human beings by splicing DNA with animals, creating the demi-human race. That is a clear nod to Enoch. The eating of the flesh and the blood ties into the Soylent system, turning people into wells, being used for Deus's bioorganic parts. It's a fun inversion. Cain takes pity on humanity and rebels against Deus and the Gazelle, kind of playing the Noah figure who spares the people. Old Man Baal and the myth of the Anima Relics also play into the Watcher's rebellion against God, more of a subversion. I find it interesting how I first interpreted the scene with Balthazar. In retrospect, I took it to mean the first humans Deus created, but in reflection, though, he was referring to the war 500 years ago. The giants were the Omnigears used by Rani Fatima and Lacan in their fight against Solaris. Xenogears also plays with the Aeon of Christ and the Aeon of Sophia. Faye, as the contact, is the Christ figure, and Ellie is the Sophia figure. In Gnostic texts, especially the Pistis Sophia, Christ comes to rescue Sophia, who fell from the Pleroma wanting to know the Father, the monad. Sophia represents the divine feminine, Christ the divine masculine. The masculine-feminine dualities pop up constantly in Xenogears. The Gazelle seeks the Anima Relics to reunite with the Animas. You can see it with Bard and Margie needing both eyes, the one-winged angel motif that continues to pop up throughout the game. Two things who can't fly, but they must rely on each other so they can. There's a real sense of duality throughout. It shows up in myths worldwide: yin and yang, chaos and order, feminine and masculine, Christ and Satan. They're two sides of the same coin that complete each other. You need both in order for the world to function. Xenogears was written by a husband and wife team in what was basically their honeymoon phase, so that union of ideas makes total sense. They saw themselves as needing each other. You see this with Ellie and Faye, and they make up for each other's weaknesses. Only when feminine and masculine play their roles can God be defeated and both be saved. The Tower of Babel is pretty obvious too. It ascends into heaven, leading to Shabbat, but it's also part of the Eldritch and holds hidden knowledge about the origins of the Demiurge. It represents both the party climbing to defeat God and God's known divine knowledge. Citan's name is another fun one. Originally as Shaitan, Arabic for Satan, Honey would change the spelling so it wouldn't sound like shit, which is fair. Still, knowing that, Citan plays the role of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, encouraging Faye and Ellie to partake of the forbidden fruit. Early on, it seems like he's pushing Faye's curiosity to become the slayer of God. Through a Gnostic lens, Citan is more like the figure who shines revelation that they are trapped in a false material world created by the Demiurge. He is the one who leads them to remove both physical limiters in Shabbat and mental ones in Solaris, basically enlightenment. He also masquerades as an almost angelic figure for a good chunk of the game. Citan has knowledge of advanced weaponry far beyond any lamb, playing the role of something like Sataniel in Gnosticism. Whether they're going with the Buddhist Hindist route towards moksha or Gnostic route of becoming as God is kind of up in the air, but it feels like it's a mixture of both. Trellian's character also pulls heavily from Nietzsche, God is dead, and the Übermensch. After the war 500 years ago and Sophia's death, what they thought God was turned out to not be true. Trellian basically declares God is dead and decides he will become God himself, the Nietzschean God-man, creating his own morality for humanity. Xenogears then breaks down the flawed ideas in this concept, pointing out why humans can't truly aspire to be God because of our own fallible nature and constant drive to the will of power. No matter how well-intentioned, playing God is doomed because we're bound to the fallen world and our own selfish desires. We can't achieve true objective morality on our own, something that, in my opinion and many others' opinions, can only come from God. Nietzsche's God is dead idea is terrifying because without a unifying divine law who decides objective morality, humans are fallible and can justify almost anything. This theme shows up a lot in JRPGs. Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card also explores this idea very well if you're interested. There are also tons of Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah references. Kadmoni hints at Adam Kadmon. In Kabbalah, we are all part of God, and God is the universe. Adam Kadmon is basically the tree of life, so a little piece of God lives in us. That ties us into humans being created to become part of Deus's flesh. The Zohar itself is named after the Kabbalistic text, the Book of Splendor, a commentary on the first 5 books of Moses. The Zohar is a giant monolith with an eye. creepy and otherworldly. The eye represents the all-seeing eye of wisdom. Odin plucked out his own eye for wisdom. Same vibe. The wave existence acts as Ein Sof, the infinite, unknowable essence of God. The opening crawl, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, is the wave existence speaking. Mahanan is a mistranslation of Makanan from the Book of Enoch, the fourth heaven known as the resting place of God. In Xenogears, Mahanan is where Deus' resting place is. Merkaba is also an intentional misspelling of Merkaba, meaning chariot of God or God's throne, talked about in Ezekiel. It appears in Kabbalah as well under the name of Metatron's cube, referred to as a blueprint for creation. It's the energy bleeding from the divine into the material world. I believe it's a Kabbalistic interpretation of Merkaba rather than Ezekiel. This makes more sense when analyzed through the broader concepts of Xenogears. The final Ouroboros fight with Miang represents the breaking of Deus' cycle, the Gnostic Demiurge, but also the start of a new one. There are Buddhist and Hinduist ideas here as well, finding one's own path through enlightenment and breaking the cycle of samsara. It's amazing how much the devs understood not just Kabbalah, but philosophy, religious texts, and psychology. It's a big reason why Xenogears and other Square games from that era are still so highly regarded for their stories. Somebody at Square was drinking the good shit and was going on psychedelic trips on a constant basis. 28 years later, and Xenogears is still being talked about. No matter how many years pass, people won't forget it. I think we've covered pretty extensively why. All those complex themes and ideas are a huge part of it. So I reached out to some other content creators to get their thoughts on why, 28 years later, Xenogears is still so widely loved.
Hello everyone, I'm Nishquick from the channel Nishquick Pops. Before I get started, I just wanted to give a big hearty thank you to Gaming with Spoons for having me on this collab and giving me this opportunity. Before I delve into anything really related to Xenogears' story and how it impacted me, I just want to give you guys a little bit of context on my relationship with this game. So I was actually born 7 months after Xenogears came out. A lot of Xenogears fans played this game back when it released in 1998, but back then I was still learning how to walk. I see this game very differently from people who played it back in 1998, but I also notice I see it very differently from my friends who are my age as well. But one thing is for certain, Xenogears is a very universal story, and its message is applicable no matter how old you are in your adult life or your teenage life. Whenever you play the game, you're always gonna get hit really hard with the emotional and impactful themes and messages from this game. The way I stumbled upon this gem was actually pretty funny. I naturally discovered Xeno with the Xenoblade Chronicles games on the Nintendo Switch. After playing Xenoblade 1, I was blown away. Mere humans or Homs facing up against mechs, then titans, then literal gods. I just could not believe my eyes. Then Xenoblade 2 left me in tears many times when it reminded me of what it means to be in love and how legacy and optimism can build a very strong future ahead. And then Xenoblade X let me fly around and blast enemies around in giant mechs, and ultimate power fantasy of mine. I saw myself in all of these games. I was reminded of my struggle, my triumphs, my fears, and my loved ones in the narrative, themes, and characters of these games. Basically, Xenoblade was just so relatable to me. And then during the lead up to the release of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in 2022, I remember so many people comparing what we were seeing in these trailers to Xenogears. Kevis and Agnes are like Kislev and Ave. Flame Clocks are like Limiters. Noah and Mio reminded people of Faye and Ellie. Mobius reminded people of the Gazelle Ministry, and so many other comparisons. So like the idiot I was 3 years back, I literally told myself, Xenogears is old, it's outdated, Takahashi and Sarai Saga didn't even complete the game. Why should I even play it? All I need is the context. I'm just gonna watch a recap so I can prep myself for the better game that is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 coming a few months later. I genuinely cannot believe I said that, thought that, and felt that way back then. And I ended up doing that. I watched the amazing recap from Terracrup, shoutouts to him, and I was spoiled by like all the twists of the game. But I was also so impressed and blown away. I thought to myself, dang, maybe I shouldn't have seen this. Maybe I should have actually played this game for myself. Flash forward 1 year later, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. Future Redeemed has blown me away even more and left the door open for some really cool things in the future. And at this point, I was convinced I need to play Xenogears. I need to understand how this all started. And after another year and lots of procrastinating, I finally booted it up. I'll tell you guys how I experienced this game, but again, I'm gonna have to paint a little bit of a picture for you guys to truly understand how much this game impacted me. 2024 was a very difficult year for me, not only because of the endless cycle of job hunting that made me feel like I was going absolutely nowhere and making absolutely no progress, but I also felt like I was losing touch with myself. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like my self-esteem was diminishing, my confidence was dwindling, and I realized I was just turning away from all the problems that were sprouting out in my life. Every time something would happen, I'd push the blame onto someone or something else and never take responsibility and own up to things on my own, no matter if it was truly my fault or not. Xenogears fans, does this sound familiar? So upon starting Xenogears, things were bleak, but I wasn't utterly hopeless. I remember I would play a chunk of this game, I would take notes on everything that I was experiencing, then listen to the corresponding Resonant Arc episode on the side the next day. As a prior Xenoblade fan, I was already noticing parallels and similarities, but some minor details kind of flew over my head. Thanks to Mike and Kaysen, I was able to catch these and delve deeper into the philosophical and religious concepts like Carl Jung's anima and animus and collective unconscious, Sigmund Freud's id, ego, and superego, and the many mysteries of Gnosticism and Jewish mysticism. Upon understanding these and many concepts even more, I realized how deeply they were rooted in other JRPGs I loved outside of Xenoblade, like Final Fantasy and Persona. Following along the Resonant Arc podcast while playing Xenogears was almost like taking a college-level course with Mike and Kaysen as my professors. I absolutely loved it. Shoutouts to you guys. I've been sort of beating around the bush with a lot of this, but I needed to let you guys know all of that so I can truly tell you how Xenogears has really, truly changed my life. Like I said before, when I played this game, or prior to playing this game, I just wasn't really in the best spot. I felt lost, I felt confused, and most of all, I was reminded of things in my past that sort of made me feel this way even more. I don't know how else to describe it, but there are moments in my past that had left me somewhat mentally fractured and fragmented, sort of like what Faye had been in Xenogears. And I remember and know why it all happened, but I didn't truly come to terms with a lot of it, and I didn't truly understand why it all happened until I saw someone like Faye individuate himself and accept all sides of him, his inner opposite, as well as his dark shadow of his past. And once he did, all the pain, trauma, and confusion, it all made so much more sense. So to me, Xenogears is way more than just an awesome story about gods and mechs, and a story that spans over thousands and thousands of years in 5 episodes. It's a deeply personal story to me about a boy who's trying to figure himself out in a world that is trying to push him to be someone that at times he may not want to be. And beyond that, it's a story about how he learns to understand himself, and beyond that, it's a story about how he comes to terms with so many things that happened in his past and moves forward to a brighter future for him and his loved ones around him as well. And I'm gonna end by saying this. As a massive Xenoblade Chronicles fan, Xenogears made me love those 4 games even more. And I gotta say, to you Xenogears fans who may not have tried the Xenoblade Chronicles games, for whatever reason, I urge you to give them a shot, because a lot of what Takahashi did in Xenogears is retold in Xenoblade Chronicles in a much different and, in some ways, a more approachable way. It's not as mature, it may not be as dark, but Xenoblade Chronicles is where we see him fully express what he has wanted to say, do what he wants to do with these concepts, and he finally gets to cap off an ending with Future Redeemed. So thank you so much for having me on this collab, and thank you Xenogears for being so amazing. I'll see you guys. Have a great one.
Xenogears, the PS1's most undisputed flawed masterpiece. So this was a game that I didn't really know all that much about prior to playing it. I think I had seen it once or twice. My brother was playing a burnt copy of it on a chipped PS1 back when I was like 10 years old. And at that point, you know, I already liked RPGs, but a game like this would have been well beyond my understanding, well beyond my ability to appreciate at the time. It wasn't until I was about 20 years old and I was collecting games for the PS1 again that I managed to score a copy of this in a small lot with the 3 main Final Fantasy games for I think $15 each, and this game, Xenogears, for $10 because it's not Final Fantasy, so it must be worth less, right? It's just the way the mentality was for some people at the time. So being the only game in that lot that I had never played, I was pretty quick to get to it there in my early 20s. And what I discovered was, quite honestly, one of the best RPGs I would say literally ever made. Flawed masterpiece? Yes. But I would say even its flaws are so iconic, so emblematic. They are these days, by many people, at least myself, almost consider a positive. But there are about, I'd say, 4 things that really drew me to this game. The first and easiest to appreciate of those 4 things would be the soundtrack. The OST is incredible, and I hear its influence all over the place these days. I was playing a shoot-'em-up visual novel style game a few months ago that I could have sworn just stole the soundtrack from Xenogears. Now, it didn't really, but I mean, the influence was obvious. That main battle theme, the ostinato there, is so strong, so powerful, so easily recognizable that it's just musically inspiring. Next was the setting. The mix between those small towns, vast deserts, the space stations, with all that alien technology and like Gundam mecha stuff on the side. It's a blend that on the surface doesn't always seem like it would go together, but time has proven again and again that it just works. Then we have the battle system. I've long said on my own channel that turn-based with real-time elements is by far my favorite type of RPG battle system. It rewards the strategic planning that you would normally get from turn-based games, but also takes into account your player skill, your reflexes, your timing abilities, and you get rewarded again for that. Or punished if you're not very good at it. The battle system is a little cryptic at first with its combo system and how you unlock new combos. And I won't lie, I didn't really get it for like the first 15 to 20 hours of the game. I think at some point I ended up looking up a really old GameFAQs article to try to figure out why I wasn't unlocking new combos. And maybe it told you in the manual, but my copy of the game sadly does not have one. But from there I started knocking out new combos like toppling dominoes, and it was just a joy watching everybody in my party get stronger and stronger with every battle. But by far the thing that I love the most about Xenogears is how it weaves its story, characters, and world together. The characters being the peak of this mountain. These are not shallow characters. You cannot just sum up all of their worries and concerns and their character growth in a line or two. What Xenogears done that was so incredible at the time it released and remains still incredible to this day is form a sort of center point between the psychological and philosophical ideas of Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm sure it pulls from even more philosophers and psychologists than that, but those are the 3 that really stand out for me. Sigmund Freud's idea of the id, ego, and the superego, Friedrich Nietzsche's nihilism, and Carl Jung's idea of the shadow self. These things are so prominent in the main character throughout the game, and they get peeled back more and more and more as the game goes along, and it just adds this incredible depth and complexity to the main character, which influences the story and the world of Xenogears. Honestly, in a way that few games have ever matched. Because of this, Xenogears will always be a timeless classic. And as I said, the undisputed, flawed masterpiece. At the end of the day, Xenogears was a victim of its own ambition. But the scars caused from being overly ambitious are so much more worth having than the beautiful facade of a game that simply doesn't try to be interesting.
Hello folks, Sparks Opus here. It's been 11 months for me since I finished Xenogears for the very first time. If you'd ask me to name one thing that made this journey so special, I would have a hard time to name one, because of how many there are. I was fully prepared to be hit with a ton of jank you would know from the earlier RPGs and JRPGs from over 25 years ago. What I was not prepared for is how far ahead of its time this game really was, and how many incredible ideas the game had, and how they were able to pull them off. Hand-drawn old-school anime cutscenes, CG cutscenes. Throughout the game you have your typical JRPG gameplay, with the rather unusual combat system that I haven't seen before. You have a stealth sequence where you can also look through doors outside to look for guards running around. You have a 3D fighting game tournament taking place, fighting with your gears. A horror game segment. You can play card games against people like Big Joe and drunk sailors. Frustrating jump and run segments. A visual novel. All of that accompanied with such a lovely cast of characters that are so beautifully written. The story and the interactions are also... Man, the whole story, it is such a grounded, mature, and just real experience. The mysteries that the game builds upon, the topics that this game also touches upon, handled in such a tasteful way with such an incredible payoff when things finally get answered, and everything just clicks. I can't help myself but continue to glaze the game every time it's being mentioned. It is so unfortunate that the game never got to tell the whole story, and Disc 2 happened. Also, it is such a shame how Square just never did anything with this game. They have pumped out so many HD 2D games, new and old, and Gears is still untouched. Keep the game as it is, honestly. Censor the blood to black or something if that's the issue. Although, people do get killed in front of the camera, so... ah well. It just genuinely baffles me. But you know what else does? This game's soundtrack. It makes me feel nostalgic over a past I never had. The whole soundtrack is such a treat to listen to. Ear candy. It really saddens me how the game gets treated by Square because it is something you can easily play even today. And I know for a fact that a lot of people out there would love to play this game. Like I said, it switches up the gameplay multiple times. You visit cool locations all the time. Unlike also Final Fantasy VII, it is a 3D game. You have a 3D environment with 2D characters running around, which works fantastically. A story with more layers than any onion I've ever seen, with depth and so much lore thanks to Perfect Works 2, something I have rarely seen before in any video game to that extent. A game accompanied with incredible music and characters I already miss so much. I really miss them. All of them. Faye, Ellie, Citan, my beloved. Bart, Billy, Margaret, Rico, Maria, Emeralda. Oh wait, I also completely forgotten to mention Graf and the other villains. I mean, yeah, what can I say? There is so much to this game. Some of those cutscenes gave me chills and are permanently engraved into my brain. Choo Choo can run off a cliff. But yeah, also Big Joe. What a legend. I'm really glad I got to experience Xenogears, man. And it makes perfect sense why people talk about it even now, soon 30 years after its release. Still asking for the game to come back in some way. It's a masterpiece. Genuinely. It deserves to be brought back. So I hope it will be coming back at some point, eventually. But we'll see. Thanks for having me, Spoons. I wish you all a very good day. Have a good one.
Hey everyone, it's Yggdrasil, and may I begin with a massive thank you to Spoons for allowing me this opportunity to share my thoughts on Xenogears and why it is still so widely discussed nearly 30 years later on. I myself only had the luxury to play through Xenogears for the first time recently, having finished it just at the start of this year, so my memories of the game are still very fresh and I'm still continuing to form my own thoughts. With that said, there are a handful of talking points that I feel contribute to why Xenogears continues to persist through those that experience it. The first of which, quite simply, is the game's scale for its time, not only in terms of represented scale in the in-game world, but also the depth of its world building, how crazily detailed and expanded upon most of its characters become, and the lengths that Tetsuya Takahashi, Soraya Saga, and other writers went on to incorporate a myriad of symbolic messages and themes rooted in Judaic Gnosticism, psychoanalysis, and much more. At the same time, I firmly believe that Xenogears would receive a mature rating in the modern day due to not only the level of mature and dark themes that the game tackles, but also the deliberate depth and detail of these difficult subjects that the game pushes the player to leisurely experience. Between these macabre scenarios, the game's purposeful and direct use of important biblical events and items, and the thoughtfully designed growth of central figures Feifeng Wang and Eliham van Houten, a true tale of boy meets girl develops, albeit with quite a bit of existential trauma and realizations thrown in. Unfortunately, however, not every character or major turning point was able to be expressed to their full limit, as the scope of Xenogears as a whole was notoriously cut short. The infamous Disc 2 of Xenogears is a painful reminder of the constraints surrounding game budget and development in the face of innovation and expression, all the more so when Xenogears still persists to this day as one of the most ambitious RPG entries in gaming history, especially for its time. Despite technically being a finished game, the painfully jarring change in the story's pacing had a significant impact on the tales of supporting characters, and for me personally, even though I knew of the constraints surrounding the game's development before even reaching Disc 2. Even with that knowledge, it still felt like I was being thrown from a place of comfort straight into a pool filled with ice. It is then also that I feel this juxtaposition between the game's discs is a strong focal point for many when it comes to discussing the game. Lastly, there are incorporations of not only core aspects of the hero's journey, a staple of many fantastical narratives throughout history, but also the indoctrination of a personal element, the perfect works timeline that I feel really aids to just how endearing Xenogears is overall. The hero's journey fits into Xenogears well, with Faye begrudgingly working through challenges and temptations with the aid of the mentor figure Satan, experiencing transformation from the depths of his despair, and seeking the freedom to live on through his newfound mastery of self. Meanwhile, the Perfect Works timeline is quite simply the main timeline of Xenogears itself, sequenced into 5 acts. To go into it briefly, the 5th act is actually the game's current events, while all prior acts are key points in the story's history that are central to fully realizing the scale of the entire narrative. While the hero's journey fleshes out the modern game wonderfully, the Perfect Works timeline fleshes out all other aspects and in turn elevates the narrative the game presents. In fact, the Perfect Works timeline persists to this day in most other entries from Monolith Soft, namely Xenoblade 1 and 2, and Xenoblade 3 of course went on to serve as a spiritual remake of Xenogears in the minds of many, its core themes and tropes heavily prevalent in the world of Ionios. It's the implementation of these themes and elements that recur throughout most Xenoblade entries that allows for a sort of drawback for more invested players to reminisce on their correlations with Xenogears, and in turn this helps indoctrinate friends of those fans into trying out Xenogears themselves. Nevertheless, it's through all of these facets, the depths of its characters and the world, the unrealized scope of its ambition, the incorporation of the hero's journey and the birth of Perfect Works, a penchant for tackling mature themes, all of these and more converge into Xenogears being a cult classic JRPG entry that strongly persists through those that experience it. But that'll be all from this Man of the Sea. So once again, thank you to Spoons for having me, and I hope you all have a great day.
What can I say? I have a soft spot for troubled yet ambitious RPGs. You know, there's nothing wrong with a polished jewel, your Dragon Quests and your Golden Suns, games that are sanded down and extremely well crafted with nothing really to complain about. But my heart lies with those diamonds in the rough. If you want to move the needle in this strange medium, sometimes you gotta get your hands a little dirty. Case in point, Xenogears. How could you deliver an elevator pitch for a game like this? Well, I know, you say, amnesiac protagonist finds his small village under attack. Adventures ensue. It's a little reductive, but it's easier than story of perennial love told via the personification of foundational concepts in psychoanalytic theory. But the moment you go from that intro FMV to the village, you know that Xenogears is an Olympic gold medalist at burying the lead. You also run the risk of making Xenogears sound like a game that's high on the smell of its own farts, but this is a decidedly unpretentious game. It's often silly, lighthearted, wearing its pop culture references on its sleeve. Laughs one minute give way to abject horror the next. One of your characters is a pink hamster named Choo Choo that can grow to gargantuan size and fight alongside your giant piloted robots. Wait, there's the sales pitch. It's the robots. Nobody could be prepared for Xenogears, including the people who made it, as evidenced by the fact that a not insignificant portion of this game's story is dictated to you rather than told through you. Indeed, many hours are spent attempting to put a lid on the veritable Pandora's box that was opened but a few dozen hours prior. It's messy, its pacing is rough, its characters deliver their messages and close their arcs with varying degrees of success. Its dual combat systems, while interesting, develop some obvious cracks not long into the game. It's far from perfect, and it can even be a little fatiguing, but it's never boring, and it's always worthwhile. Xenogears is a game that contradicts itself by pushing this medium forward both clumsily and gracefully at the same time. It's an essential RPG that begs the question, what can video games be? And answers itself by hook or by crook. It's in that pantheon of games that left me feeling empty as the credits rolled. Not because I didn't love it, but because I knew that there was never going to be anything like this ever again, was there? I don't think there's a greater compliment I can pay to a game than it was so good that I was kind of depressed afterwards. In spite of itself, Xenogears is a titanic JRPG, and somehow, against the odds, worthy of the reverence its name inspires in everyone who's played it.
For a lot of us, myself included, it dropped during our formative years, from its use of psychology to Nietzschean undertones to the critiques of blind faith and organized religion, to exploring the true nature of God. Xenogears is a spiritual journey, a game of self-discovery. It doesn't just ask you to understand the world around you, it asks you to explore it. It's not just a game about God and religion, it's a game about human relationships and what it really means to be human with all our faults. What makes it stand out is no matter how flawed the game is, the pure ambition to create this sci-fi epic will forever be remembered. Whether another game will ever craft a story as ambitious as Xenogears and actually pull it off remains to be seen, but I look forward to the day someone tries. For all of its flaws, faults, and pitfalls, Xenogears still deserves to be remembered and talked about. It's a game uniquely held up by its cult following, but only keeps growing in popularity as new fans discover what Xenogears has to offer. Do I think Xenogears is still worth playing today? Yes and no. It really depends on the type of gamer you are. If you are a more driven by gameplay gamer, you're probably going to struggle with its pacing, the long drawn out dialogue, and that complete presentation shift on disc 2. The gameplay mechanics are unique, but I don't think they're strong enough on their own to carry the game for everyone. Simply put, if you are looking for a game to carry you gameplay-wise, Xenogears probably isn't going to be the game to do that. On the other hand, if you're like me and you appreciate a good narrative and can swallow the many flaws, then there is something really special here. Xenogears, as it stands, is a game for a specific type of gamer. As you heard from other content creators, it's still inspiring so many people and growing in popularity all these years later. That speaks volumes to the scope the development team envisioned and why it's going to keep being talked about long into the future. The crazy thing about Xenogears is you don't walk away from it being the same person. It's a story that sticks with you. It changes you. It questions how you see the world and those around you. Xenogears is a spiritual journey, just like I said. Whether it brings you closer to your faith or makes you question it, one can't deny its impact. It's amazing that all these years later, a game about battling God in a mech still has so many people returning to it because of how philosophically rich it is. Xenogears may not be perfect, It may be flawed, but like us, it exists in a flawed state. Our story isn't perfect either, and I think Xenogears' writing and nature both remind us of that. Wow, what a journey, and I'm glad I have this done. I knew it would be a Herculean effort going into this game, and I don't think I was truly ready for how big of a task this was going to be. While I do have other plans to cover other Xeno games eventually, I want to take a bit of a break first from Xenogears games. They tend to be very long and story dense, so I need some time to recover before diving into another Xeno project. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, leave a comment and subscribe, and ring that bell notification so you do not miss a video when it goes live. It helps the channel and lets content reach more people. Stay safe out there, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.